Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your favorite weekend experience. Welcome to the show that apologizes for the fake beefs that a certain someone wearing a white cap at the moment creates more than professional athletes do for the actual terrible things they say and do. Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, where despite the subtle shots that I like to throw, we don't talk basketball, we talk football on the show. You guys already know this is the fastest rising football talking show in the podcast game today. By what numbers? I actually don't really have any proof source. Trust me, bro. But in all seriousness, welcome back to a show that loves its fun, football, and chaos. Your favorite chaotic trio is back properly, ladies and gentlemen. Normally, I might as well just recognize him first. As always, joining me, Iceman Jurg, as I should probably switch that lower third at some point because we're not talking hockey here. Joining me, as always, Game Master Justin. Justin, how are we doing today?
This is gonna be the high point of my day because the rest of it's gonna be in bed and sipping Gatorade. So, I love talking football with you guys.
Absolutely, we are. Hopefully, the show can do its best to help ail Justin because clearly he's suffering right now. But hopefully we'll be able to give that bump up that he wants. And of course, rejoining us this week. We were concerned last week. Was last week going to be the last ranked podium ever because he was apparently attacked by a mask-wearing, tropical flavor Fanta having deer. And, for all we knew, there was going to be issues in travel today as well. Thankfully, he has landed to his destination safely, and he survived the deer onslaught from last week. So he is here joining us again. Podfather Rick. Rick, thank you for making it.
I escaped the dungeon of doom with that near attack. To answer your question from last week, Justin, no, I did not drink the pineapple Fanta. Thank goodness. There's a reason for that now. I'm actually starting a little bit of a intermittent fasting diet, so I'm probably not going to be drinking a lot more soda. So there'll be a lot less expressions in the future.
The death of a segment.
However, I did record one back when I was in Virginia. I'm in Tampa, by the way, but I did record one when I was in Virginia, which is probably the series finale because it's not pineapple, it's pina colada Fanta. And I haven't sent it because it's terrible. It's a terrible experience. But yeah, I'm back. We're in a new city. We're in a new environment. We're back on hotel Wi-Fi, so there can only mean good things. And we're ready to rock and roll. So happy to be back.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, compared to anyone else that's probably podcasted here on this show, hotel Wi-Fi only makes it a better show for Rick somehow. We honestly haven't cracked that code. There are a lot of different things we have yet to crack on this show, and I think that's up there for like the top 3, top 5 of things that we're just not going to be able to figure out. I think that speaks more to the fact that Rick, I think you got to get the home network rechecked at some point.
I mean, I've gotten an extender, so it's fine. It's just basement apartments in New York tend to, be struggling because all the wireless are above ground when they should be below ground because, trees and hurricanes. But hey, like I said, if I got to stay in a hotel every Saturday for one day only to do this for a couple hours, it's fine. No big deal. I'll find a good hotel around JFK to do that. So
hopefully not. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, like I said in the intro, fun football chaos. And as you see in the title today, NFL wheeling and dealing. Guys, the NFL trade deadline. We thought we had it last week. We thought, we talked about some deals. Christian McCaffrey, done. I think the Kadarius Toney deal we talked about last week, done. We thought, all right, that's it. Decent deadline, actually. A couple teams made moves. Oh, how little we knew at that moment. Many more trades would occur after last week.
I mean, normally that's all that we see from an NFL trade deadline, but this was like everyone just decided, you know what, we suck this year, so let's get somebody new in here. So that's what happened.
Absolutely, it was really an aberration for the most part when it comes to the NFL trade deadline. We had it in the description. I think anyone that's talked about it this week on a podcast, it's a general consensus. This is easily the most active trade deadline that we have seen in our lifetimes. And probably the most active we might get will this set a new trend? Will this just be a one-off? Only the future, the very distant future, will be able to tell us that. But for now, we're in the present, we're in the now, and we're going to talk about that in this episode. And of course, give you our weekly pick challenge where, we try not to get our butts handed to us by a lifeless deer head on a weekly basis. So We'll have
you two try. I can't speak for me.
we'll have that later in the show. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, you come on now. If you guys have been here long enough, it's been 32 weeks of this. You guys know how we start. Justin, our games master, he has created a bunch of fun games for us to play, and we have some today. I believe we do have trivia. I think we have a little bit of Would You Rather, and also some fact or fiction. This is the place to be when it comes to some fun NFL games. So, Justin, I'll let you take it away. What's the first game we're playing?
Well, we might as well stick with some trivia, right?
Run the show, man.
All right. So, we are going to start with a one guess per person question.
Ooh.
Right? And if you were watching NFL Red Zone last week, you may know the answer. So I'm not sure if you guys partake in that. But last week on Sunday, Christian McCaffrey became one of the very few people to ever rush for, receive, and pass for a touchdown in the same game. Can you tell me the last player to do so?
Do we have to tell you the year? Because I don't remember the year, but I'm pretty sure I remember the player.
You can try.
Okay, well, I know it's LaDainian Tomlinson. I know it's him. The question is what year. I want to say 2005. Was that the year he won MVP?
I think so.
So 2005 LT.
There you go. No fooling you guys. That's an easy question. I might need to bust out another one.
Hey,
Are you guys watching? Did you see that on Red Zone also?
I didn't.
I was walking off Grown Up Van's Warped Tour that I was at last weekend in Vegas. I was walking to the fact that there were people that rated their closets for Hot Topic merch and leather that they wore back in 02 that they should have left back in 02. So that was more my thing. But I heard about it after the fact.
I saw it on either Twitter or IG after the game. So that's where I got that from. That's where I got that from. Justin, I don't have a cable box up here. You can't be bringing Red Zone stuff. That is not fair to me. It's not.
You don't need a cable box for Red Zone.
I mean,
they have a streaming service now.
Yeah, but Red Zone on Xfinity, like, come on now.
Yeah, come on now, Justin. You're working against me on that question, man.
All right.
What else do we got for trivia, my boy?
Okay, here's another one. Courtesy of CBS Sports. Through 8 games, who has the highest passer rating on third down in a single season since 1991?
Wow, okay, so this is a multi-layered question here. We're talking about through 8 weeks of a season, the last 30 years about?
Well,
the highest QBR rating on third down.
It might not actually be through 8 games of the season. One of the top players, I'm not saying the top, but one of the top players is currently competing for that record. It does say in a single season. So taking that player out, which if you wanted a hint, it is currently Tua Tagovailoa, who has a 142.7 passer rating on third downs through the season so far, the highest of all time. Can you tell me who the next best is? If you want, why don't we name all 3? I got top 3 after that.
Wow. Okay.
Watch us somehow name 4 through 6. It's gonna happen.
If you did, I wouldn't know. I don't have those players.
Well, QBR is a relatively newer. I mean, I don't know how new of a stat is, but it's relatively a newer accepted statistic, right?
Well, not QBR, passer rating.
Passer rating, right?
Yeah.
Well, still same thing.
It is also if you'd like to know, it is, like I said, since 1991. That is the longest. That's how far back they've been keeping track of.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So passer rating to me, this is interesting because one thing that I've always appreciated with Justin's question is that the answer isn't always obvious. It's not always the best players. And I think with passer rating, Rick, I don't. It's not necessarily the best quarterback since '91. It's like yards, of course, help. Touchdowns, of course, help. But I think completion percentage has to play a big part of that. You got to have a really high completion percentage, especially the last 5-6 years where completion percentage has been taken to a completely new and different level. So,
oh yeah, no, for sure.
So
for sure,
when we're thinking yardage, Like, yeah, it'd be nice if a guy had a really great yardage season, high touchdown, but they got to have low interceptions and high completion percentages as well. So
Yeah, that's an accurate assessment. And I mean, I even think though that the guys that have thrown the most touchdowns and thrown the most yards probably could be on this list too. Because I mean, you look at a guy like a Drew Brees, maybe like a Drew Brees probably could make this list. I mean, I don't know how often the Saints were in third down, but I mean, let's be real here. If they were in a third down and Brees had to throw the ball, 8 times out of 10, it was going to go for a first down or a touchdown. I mean, that's just Drew Brees.
right.
Maybe I'll go with that. Maybe I'll try and put us on the board first with Drew Brees.
Drew Brees is not on my list.
Okay.
Sadness. Well, to that same end, Rick, if we're talking elite quarterbacks, and this is certainly a guy who, and again, you want to talk about passer rating and getting those big completions, being efficient with it. Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP. And
until this year.
Yeah, well, that's why we're not talking about this season. But he's a 4-time MVP, and in 3 of his MVP seasons, he threw for 40-plus touchdowns and 8 or less interceptions. And especially the last 2 with the completion percentage he's had, I got to think there's a stretch of time where Aaron Rodgers was looking unbeatable. So maybe, yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is not a bad shout here. He's certainly one of those guys that has helped progress the game when it comes to high touchdown numbers and low interception numbers with that completion percentage.
Definitely.
Him and Drew Brees certainly played a role in that. So let's go with 2 of the guys that have helped change the game in the last decade or so with completion percentage and being that pinpoint accurate. Let's go with Aaron Rodgers.
Sure. Aaron Rodgers in 2009 had a passer rating of 133.5 and is currently 3rd on that list.
Wow. And that's not even one of his MVP seasons.
09? No.
No, that's before he became this. Wow. Is that? Hold on.
They won a Super Bowl that year, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
It was
no, I think it was the next year.
So I think,
It was 2010, 2011 because I was a freshman in college.
Because 09 was the Drew Brees New Orleans Saints taking on that 14-2.
Oh, that was the Saints Colts game, right? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah.
Which still to this day, the Colts at 14-0 were wild. All right, so we got bronze here.
Yep.
Now we need silver and gold.
Yikes. Well, I mean, let's talk about this for a second here. Do we go with the other guy who's been off this year, but probably is one of the more elite quarterbacks of all time? Or do we maybe go for a sneaky pick and go for the guy who faced Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl that year? Because I think you could argue Roethlisberger or Brady. I think you could argue either one of them.
Right.
Were big on third downs, especially Roethlisberger when he had Hines Ward or Mike Wallace or Juju towards the end of his career.
A young Antonio Brown before he lost his mind.
Keith Miller and any running backs that were coming out. Right, exactly. There were a lot of weapons that Roethlisberger could sling the ball to, and Pittsburgh never looked like they were in trouble when it came to those late down situations. So I might go 0 for 2, but you know what? This is a good question. This is, I think, a good shout. So I'll take it. I'll ride with Big Ben out of Oxford, Miami of Ohio, and give me Roethlisberger on this list.
Ben Roethlisberger was extremely efficient on third down, but did not make this list according to CBS Sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout at all. I mean, you think of the weapons that Roethlisberger and that Steelers offense had, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're talking about teams of the 2010s, I mean,
that was just a team that always seemed like they were converting. I don't have the numbers for that team, but I mean, they just always seemed like, all right, it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. And you just kind of knew, like there was very few times where you were like, they're not going to get that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's certainly, and this is planning way far ahead, but after this NFL season ends and when we have a couple fun episodes during the offseason, boys, I think some team revisiting needs to be done, and we can revisit a whole multi-year stretch of the Pittsburgh Steelers from the 2010s, because there were some really good Steelers teams that just could not finish their season strong, and there was some Hall of Fame talent on that team, to say the least. So,
Oh yeah, no question about that.
Not a bad shot with Big Ben. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about being a master at the craft, Rick? I mean, maybe I'm striking out on this one as well, but I'd be surprised because Brady's had some really good seasons as well.
Yes. The only thing that I will say is how many times can you recall Brady on third down when it wasn't like a third and short that they would just hand it all off to insert, comeback player of the year running back name here.
Right.
Corey Dillon, Jonas Gray, Kevin Falk, etc.
Garrett Blunt.
Yeah.
Jarvis Green Ellis.
Oh my God, Danny Woodhead.
Oh yeah.
So as we play, name this New England Patriot running back.
Well, to be fair though, how many times do you remember him being third and short and he hits Wes Welker on a slant, Julian Edelman on a slant,
Rob
Gronkowski up the seam?
He had some guys that he could trust on that third down, and that's
what made
part
that
of
running
the
game
reason.
effective.
It's odd to me that they were always slot receivers and tight ends. There was never like the big home run threat. I mean, they had Randy Moss that 1 year, but other than that, like I can't really name a good number one Patriots receiver that they had.
Deion Branch.
but I mean, like that was one game. Right. That was one great game. But other than that, it was like he made stars out of everybody basically. But he also used the guys that weren't the obvious picks. I mean, we're not mentioning a name here, but we know the other tight end who was also good in the Tom Brady system. So.
He who shall not be named.
Roger Goodell.
Yeah. Martellus Bennett.
What do we?
Just so we could keep it moving, just Tom Brady. If he's not on it, I both wouldn't and would be shocked, but let's just keep it moving.
He's not on my list, guys.
This list is a fraud.
Yeah.
Fraudulent.
Do you guys want a hint? Because you only have one guess each.
Right. Yeah. Give us a hint.
Sure.
All right. Aaron Rodgers in 2009 is the most recent person on this list.
Okay. So this leads me down an interesting pathway because now we're talking about Peyton Manning. Now we're talking about Brett Favre, possibly.
Kurt Warner.
The greatest
John
Elway, maybe. Because John Elway did have some weapons too. Randall Cunningham was another big guy. If you want to go back to like Culpepper, maybe. There's a lot of like those types of quarterbacks. that maybe.
Dan Marino, maybe? Jesus. What about Dan Marino? He was ahead of his time, especially when it came to passing.
Doug Flutie could have been a big guy. You're talking 91 to Jim Kelly, maybe Buffalo. That I know it's going back. Aikman is a possibility.
Right. He had his main superstar, but there's a decent receiving core in Dallas. Although honestly, it's funny looking back at some of the stats of the guys that came in the 80s and the 90s. Looking at John Elway's and Troy Aikman's year by year stats, that's a trip to say the least on like their career numbers.
The funny thing is, you look at their stats in 2022, and you're like, these guys weren't that impressive.
Yeah,
but at the time, you didn't want to face them.
Yeah, at the time you didn't want to, and at the time, you were like, yeah, John Elway might have 15 interceptions, but he could easily drop 4 touchdowns on you in that game.
These guys weren't standing in the pocket and throwing up Hail Marys to guys every third down. These were guys that were afraid they were going to get their head taken off if they didn't either get rid of the ball or take a knee.
Yeah. This is going to be controversial, but if John Elway played his style in today's game, it's Davis Mills.
I was going to say Kyler Murray.
John Elway wasn't a runner.
I thought he was. I thought he liked to scramble.
He wasn't that significant of a runner. Like they hadn't really. Michael Vick was the first.
He wasn't the runner in the way where you thought he was going to scramble for a 60-yard touchdown, but he scrambled around a lot. He moved around. Yeah. He waited for guys to get open. And in today's NFL, where you can't hit, he might have evolved into that kind of player.
Maybe. He also wouldn't have lasted that long because he had those big teeth.
The thing when it comes to those retro conversations is that we never put out the statement in the front end. Are we just taking that guy from back then and dropping them, or are we giving them time in today's world, understanding what today's game is like?
Because that's a different question. For now,
I know, but to be fair, I'm just saying generally with those conversations,
A name popped into my head, and I'm going to move this conversation along. I know it's probably not a good answer, but it's an answer that I'm going to give anyways. And for me, there's a lineage factor to it. I'm going to go with Cordell Stewart from the Steelers.
Ooh, the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Why?
Again, it's the same Steelers type of like offensive mold. And I know they weren't as great back in the 90s as Roethlisberger had them, but at the same time, like he could still find a way to scramble, get the open guys, and even throw downfield very far. I mean, that was also Bill Cowher's offense. So that's the immediate lineage to Mike Tomlin's offense, which is kind of the same mold. Cordell was a very underrated NFL quarterback. Like he was never in the upper echelon like a Dan Marino and a Peyton Manning. But at the same time, third down passer rating sounds like something that he would be up there in, or he would be very good in because of his ability as a dual threat. This was Army knife kind of way. I know it's not the answer probably, but I'm throwing it out there because I think it's a good shout, a good retro conversation.
It is not one of the answers. I was just curious what your thinking was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely can hear exactly what you're talking about. It does sound like something he would have been up there in his time period in his seasons. But as far as since the stat was recorded, he is not in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Fair thing. So, this is tough because I had 2 names in my head, and so we for sure can't go 3 for 3. I at least want to try to get us a second. I'm torn. I'm torn right now between Peyton and Marino. I don't know who I want to give the edge to in that combo. I don't know.
I mean, they both had an excellent assortment of weapons on their side. Peyton had the Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark. Dan Marino, for all the years that he had, O.J. McDuffie and Aronde Gadsden, there were guys there in Miami that were just nightmarish for, Justin and I as we were growing up as Jets fans. So
it's tough. If I have to give the slight edge.
Oh, wait. Another name just entered the conversation for me, Jerk.
Okay.
Steve Young.
Ooh.
Because think about who he was finding every single time.
Terrell Owens.
And
Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
You know what?
NFL quarterback club, baby.
I think that might be the answer now, actually. I mean, heck, you're telling me he's throwing it to Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens? Come on now. Jerry Rice, you could throw the ball 30 yards away from him and he'll somehow be able to find it and come down with it. Yeah. Give me Steve Young then, actually. That's a good pull, Rick.
That's a good pull, Rick and Jerg for getting the answer. In 1994, Steve Young had a quarterback rating of 141.2 on third down, first place overall.
Wow.
The second place guy that you were missing was mentioned, by the way, in your name of quarterbacks being brought up. Jerg, you had it. The Greatest Show on Turf, 1999. Kurt Warner had 137.3.
Yep. That's good.
We continue at least the tradition, Rick, of we mentioned every answer possible.
Oh, we did.
And then some. I guarantee.
And we mentioned guys that it wouldn't be anyways.
Oh, yeah. If we had like a top 15, if Justin somehow had like a top 10 list, I promise I think we hit at least like 8 of them. So
we have to do an episode during the offseason just naming random quarterbacks. That's all we do the entire episode. Yeah. We do 5 hours.
Oh yeah, and forget just starters. We're going to name backup quarterbacks. Who's your favorite? Yeah. Who's your favorite backup quarterback since 2000?
All time backup quarterbacks.
Hey, Tavares Jackson ain't a bad shout for me personally. I just like the idea of Tavares Jackson holding the clipboard.
I like either Toby Stoner or Toby Carodi, both because they were named Tobi, which is just the only time I've ever seen that spelling of Toby ever anywhere. So those are good for me.
So as we really go and dive deep in the past, even deeper than Justin probably thought we would, let's go. Let's move on. I assume we have at least one Would You Rather. So Justin, lay it on us. The Games Master continues the second of the triumvirate of games that he's come up with for our show. Justin, what do we got? What are we picking between? What are we deciding between on this?
All right. Well, if you had to pick a first ballot Hall of Famer, who are you choosing? Matt Ryan or Matt Stafford?
Oh, damn.
Not necessarily first ballot, but if you had to pick someone going into the Hall of Fame and you had to vote, you had to choose between the two.
Oh, so it's like my card is full. I have one guy left, and they're my main two options. Okay.
You know,
I can give you some stats.
You do that after because I feel like I'm going to go based on one thing solely. Matt Stafford's won a Super Bowl. Matt Ryan hasn't. That's kind of like a baseline. Like let's talk about it this way. Eli Manning is probably going to get into the Hall of Fame at some point in the future. Was he a great quarterback? No, but the guy won 2 Super Bowls, including beating the then undefeated New England Patriots in a classic.
Yeah.
So he'll probably get in based on those laurels alone. He wasn't a great quarterback. He was a very good quarterback. He'd be in the Hall of Very Good. I think both these guys are in the Hall of Very Good quarterbacks, but I think because Matt Stafford has had a career renaissance in his first year in LA and won a Super Bowl. Now, granted, did he do a whole heck of a lot? Sure, he threw the ball to Cooper Kupp, and Cooper Kupp did the rest, but their defense was solid. So you can argue that played. But Stafford, I think, has that edge. And it's tough because Matt Ryan's a very good quarterback as well. But because of that edge, I'd give it to Stafford.
Well, let's look up some stats first. So
Well, can I
Stafford
pick mine first? Like, give us all the stats.
I want to give you guys all the information before you start, making
fair.
picks.
Well, Jerk, it's better that you know going into it because I'm just going to be the lemma that just says whatever the hell I want. You at least will have knowledge.
Fair
Stafford does have the Super Bowl champion. He is a comeback player of the year. He's also the first player to ever complete 60% of his passes in every game in a season. He has a career completion percentage of 63.3, 330 pass touchdowns with 169 interceptions, and 51,758 yards for a passer rating of 90.9. However, Matt Ryan also does not have a Super Bowl, but has the NFL MVP award. He is the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was an Offensive Player of the Year at one point. He's got more Pro Bowls. He has 60 completion percentage of 65.6, 376 touchdowns to 179 interceptions, 61,743 yards, and a passer rating of 93.9. So he does have the leap. He did play an extra season over Stafford, and Stafford does have those injury concerns, which is why he may not be as high in those career stats. But Stafford does have a good amount of yards and touchdowns. I'm sorry, Ryan has a good amount of yards and touchdowns over Stafford.
It kind of to Rick's point, like realistically, all due respect to both these guys because they accomplished more in that certain span than probably any of us could given several lifetimes. But I think both are Hall of Very Good. But if I did have to, gun to my head, put one of these guys down in my Hall of Fame ballot, I'd actually go Matt Ryan. Both guys have the counting stats. I'm not going to make any spare parts about the counting stats necessarily. Yards, touchdowns, they're both going to finish very high up, especially with what the game has become. My only thing is I understand Stafford now has the Super Bowl, but if there's one thing I think of the Hall of Fame, I think people are, and they're already doing it, I think people are going to hold against Stafford that aside from a handful of seasons in Detroit, it can never be done. And yes, you can argue, well, Detroit was that bad of an organization. They forced 2 Hall of Famers to retire at their peaks. Very fair. But Atlanta, they didn't always have the top tier talent. They had good pieces here and there. They had pockets of time where there was good spot. And Matt Ryan got as much as he could out of it and actually made the playoffs a couple times. They made it to the NFC Championship game, I believe, the year that the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl. I believe the 49ers beat the Falcons in that NFC Championship game. They made it to that Super Bowl. Now, yes, that was quite the collapse. But I think you have that MVP. You have that Offensive Player of the Year. You have the Pro Bowls. I think the thing that comes up in conversations now, yes, the championships matter. So does Julian Edelman get in the Hall of Fame? Should I consider him on my list just because he is that 3-time Super Bowl champion and has that one MVP? But he doesn't have the counting stats. He doesn't have the individual accolades. Whereas between those two guys, and look, I understand that the NFC was stacked for both of these guys' tenure, but Matt Ryan still made the Pro Bowl a very, very good amount of times. So if I have to give it to just barely an edge, and again, this is splitting hairs here. I'm not going against Rick because he's wrong. Like, I don't. This is a flip of a coin. I don't mean to say that you are wrong, Rick. I mean, like, that's not my reason for disagreeing here. Like, I'm just going to go personally with Matt Ryan. I think there is a little bit more in Matt Ryan's career in terms of what he did in Atlanta versus, like, I think people will hold the Detroit years against Matthew Stafford at the end of the day. And
I mean, I agree. I understand that point, and I agree with that to a certain extent. I mean, look, it's kind of in the same mold as, for me, when Oakland drafted Jamarcus Russell, they didn't expect him to be as big of a flop as he did. When Detroit drafted Matthew Stafford, yeah, they expected him to be the savior, but Detroit didn't add anybody around them. Calvin Johnson aside, who else was really there? I mean, Matt Stafford had a difficult time in Detroit. Atlanta didn't have the cupboard as bare in a sense, but Matt Ryan was still able to make things work. And again, I'll say this: Matt Ryan led Atlanta to their first Super Bowl since Chris Chandler did. That alone is Hall of Fame worthy.
yeah.
When you can follow Chris Chandler to the Hall of Fame, keep in mind Michael Vick didn't do it in Atlanta, so it's pretty significant there.
And the thing is, my bad, Rick, but just multiple deep playoff runs as well. They made at least one other NFC Championship game aside from the year they made it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And think of who he beat in that Super Bowl, in that run to the Super Bowl. They beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the NFC Championship game. Like, one of the you talk about being a guy who he's going to be in the Hall of Fame easily. Like, now granted, like Aaron Rodgers, his defense was that defense was terrible in that game, but they still hung. I remember that game in particular. They hung 44 on the Packers defense in the NFC Championship game. That's supposed to be top four, like a fellow top four team in the league. These are the last four teams, and you hung 40 on what's supposed to be one of the last best teams standing. There's like it's just, and I agree with you. Like, from our perspective, we understand that Detroit didn't do a lot, but I'm also, part of me has to consider the NFL Hall of Fame, and I got to say, a lot of these people don't put context when they make these votes. They don't. And I have to take that partially into account. So I would give a very, very slight edge to Matt Ryan. But both of these guys, like, when their names get called up, not going to be first ballot. But we're going to hear their names for however long they're going to stay on the ballot when it comes to the Hall of Fame. We're going to hear their names year in and year out for a good little while. So,
what the other beautiful thing is, too, with your pick there, Jerg? Matt Ryan, the only times that he made the playoffs were when Atlanta won the division, realistically speaking. Like, they might have made it as a wild card one or two times, but Detroit, if they made it, was just as a wild card. So Stafford wasn't good enough to win his division until he went to LA. Yeah. And again, it's the inverse. Joe Montana was great in San Francisco, went to Kansas City and was terrible. Matt Stafford was in Detroit, and he wasn't bad, but he wasn't good. Went to LA, won a Super Bowl. So, it's interesting.
And a couple division titles, a couple playoff wins. Like, I think the Stafford and the Lions, 0 for 3 in their playoff appearances, like, in terms of games? They never won.
Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, well. Oh, Marvin Lewis. Poor guy. Anyways, Rick goes Matt Stafford. I go Matt Ryan. Justin, do we continue with the Would You Rather, or are we moving on to fact or fiction?
Would you like another Would You Rather?
Why not?
All right. Well, we'll keep it simple. Where does OBJ sign?
Ooh.
What is simple about this question?
Well, not the Packers. We know that.
It's simpler than the other one.
Oh, God. The St. Louis Battlehawks of the XFL.
I like to see that. To LSU's coaching staff as a wide receivers coach.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's such a weird question because what is Odell Beckham Jr. now? Like, what is he, and what team could use him without the potential looming threat of him going back to the ways of him being a clown, really, on the sidelines?
That's so long ago at this
point. I think the concern now is if you sign OBJ and you give him some money, is he going to make it through the whole season? Because,
he
didn't. He was not healthy for the Browns that last year. Nope. And then he got traded, and he made it all the way to the Super Bowl, which was a solid 9-game stretch for him. And then he got injured again. So, and obviously that's why he's not on a team today. So, in your opinion, where do you think he's going to end up playing? Because he will end up on a team this year.
So we can rule out the Carolina Panthers for sure.
Well, yes, of course. I'm going to throw out a team and there's really no logic behind this. There's no rhyme or reason for it. I just think it would be an interesting fit for him, Buffalo, because I think in that system with Diggs and with Gabe Davis and with Dawson Knox there, he doesn't have to be an every down wide receiver. He can be like fourth on the depth chart, but you can stash him and make him that surprise deep ball threat when you have a situation where you need to give Diggs or Davis a playoff. And I think that's probably the best situation for him to have a win now field. I get it. Philadelphia might be in the same way too, but again, Philadelphia's wide receiver core is such that he would be needed as like an every down guy, and I don't think his body can hold up to that yet. I think Buffalo might give him the best.
You don't think it's comparable to Buffalo? They got a young second or third year receiver as their number 2 who's playing pretty well. You have a stud as your number 1 who's coming down with all the contested balls, running past people. I mean, I'm not comparing Diggs. Diggs having he's a top receiver in the league.
No, and I mean, I look
DJ Brown's a close second.
I look at Dallas Goedert versus Dawson Knox, and I figure it's kind of a similar mold. But I feel like in Sean McDermott's offensive scheme, he wouldn't need to be used as heavily as he might be in Nick Sirianni's offensive scheme.
Right? Wouldn't you think that the Eagles' offensive scheme is a more run-first scheme, anyways?
They're showing you a lot more passing, especially with AJ Brown there now.
They are, and they're completing their passes, which is different from last year. They're still a run-first team in my mind. But they have way more rushing touchdowns than receiving touchdowns this year.
But I also feel like I feel like if Beckham can get to an AFC team and win a Super Bowl with an AFC team, in his mind he'll say, "I've won it with the NFC and the AFC. I'm good. I've done it all. I shut down the Pro Bowl. La-di-da for me." I don't know. Like I said, I think either Buffalo or Philadelphia give him the best win now. But here's the thing about Philadelphia that concerns me a bit. And I heard this coming down to Tampa, and it sounds true. We don't know what team Philadelphia really is until the playoffs. Because let's be honest here, they're going to make the playoffs, but we still don't know who they are. And Jalen Hurts even said this perfectly. Yeah, he was 14-0 at Alabama one year. Guess what? They lost the title game. So you don't really know what Philadelphia is, and you don't know that these teams that are fighting get guys back. And all it takes, you've seen from the Phillies, all it takes is one win to get hot, and you can blast through everybody in your division and in your conference to make a surprise Super Bowl bid. Buffalo, I feel like, is a little bit more of a surer bet than Philadelphia at this point.
I would think that if out of the two, I would assume he's going to Buffalo.
Yeah.
What about you, Jared?
See, it's tough because I wish I knew the timeline off the top of my head. Like, is he coming back this month? Because last I heard, it was December.
The rumor was that he was waiting for the trade deadline to settle, and then they have, I believe, there's another week or two before he would have to sign somewhere.
To be eligible for the
deadline in which that someone, if you're going to play this season, you have to be signed by, I believe.
Because I like how Rick mentions the Super Bowl thing, because I think for Odell, he's won a Super Bowl now. Like, I think team-wide, he has it on his resume, and he played his part in that run. He got injured in that game, and this is not fact. This is not opinion. This is fact. If Odell's healthy the entire game, the Rams have a much more comfortable win, because he was the one torching the Bengals defense before Cooper Kupp did. So
absolutely,
like he's proven himself. To me, he doesn't need to validate himself anymore. At this point, what do you want if you're Odell? Do you want to go? Do you want to be on a team just to get another Super Bowl? Do you want to get back to a point where you could be that not number one receiver? I don't think his body would allow it, but maybe number two if the number one is really good. And that's why I'm going a little bit of a wild card here. I know you wouldn't think that he would actually play on this team, and there's a lot of receiving depth right now. And when their number one receiver comes back, they're going to be even deeper. I'm going to go with the team that the Rams beat in the Super Bowl. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think you have him and Jamar Chase being there and Joe Burrow. That's an LSU connection right there. I think he can be a valuable veteran presence there in terms of just being a guy who's been through the battles. They literally saw him on the other side last year, and they game planned against him. To get a kind of guy who made the impact he did for the Rams, I think it would be valuable for Burrow and them to get an extra weapon. And I think the Bengals, they needed a little bit of something. I think more so if they had made a trade at the deadline. Maybe it should have been for defense. But another weapon to suffice the loss of OBJ and the loss of Chase for a little bit, and plus Joe Mixon hasn't been that impressive on the ground this season. It's actually been, to me, a pretty disappointing year for him. If you need to go for a air attack, why not get that guy? And again, he doesn't need to, even without Jamar Chase, he doesn't need to be the number one guy there because T. Higgins is fantastic. And Tyler Boyd, he's very close to 500 receiving yards. He's like a couple off. My prediction for 31,000-yard receivers ain't looking that bad still. So it depends on when Jamar Chase comes back. But I think Odell can make it work there. I think it's a playoff caliber team. He doesn't need to be the number one now, nor when Jamar Chase comes back. And I think Joe Burrow can make it work. Notice how I specified Joe Burrow and not Zach Taylor there. But I think Joe Burrow can make it work with Odell on that team. So it's a little bit of a wild card there. Give me the Bengals.
I think the thing too is that, if anyone's saying, well, why not the Rams? Well, why haven't they signed him yet?
Yeah.
If the Rams were that in love with him coming off of it, and the Rams have all this good feeling about him, why wasn't he on the roster week one? I get he was hurt, but why wasn't he at least under contract week one? Or why is it taking this long if you're the Rams to sign him again? I get the injury, but
I think the longer it goes, the less likely he goes back to LA. They're playing bad football. I don't think they're going to win this week. And I mean, I know they need the help on the offense, but I don't know if Odell's the answer there because they do have some decent receivers there. Two teams that I thought are worth mentioning, by the way, that you guys have not. Both teams in purple, the Minnesota Vikings
and the Baltimore Ravens
have KJ Osborne there, but couldn't hurt to have an extra guy there. And then the Baltimore Ravens, who just lost Rashad Bateman for the season, they need the wide receiver depth.
Yeah, but again, because my thing with the Ravens is the similar way for me as the Eagles. I feel like he would play a bigger role there, and it's more of a proclivity to injury, in a sense, to re-injuring that case. The Vikings are in a bad shout because of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, along with Osborne and TJ Hawkinson now.
He would be the number one guy in Baltimore. I know they did just sign Deshaun Jackson. He was just activated. Mark Andrews is actually now doubtful for Monday night.
Yeah.
So he would need to be a bigger, but that's in a guy for a guy like Odell, that doesn't really sound like a problem in his mind. He wants to be the guy,
Yes, but he wants.
I understand
to
what you're
be
saying.
the guy,
It might be more beneficial for him in a system that spreads it out. But listen, if he could be the guy on a Ravens team that's playing pretty well right now, especially offensively.
Yeah.
And to be fair, final point before we move on to fact or fiction, I think it's worth noting, does Odell have the motivation to have a great end to the season? Does he maybe want to get one more good payday? He's not going to get a top payday, but can he get one more? Look at not to the same
Someone
level.
will give him a decent deal. They'll give him a 1-year deal for $8-10 million.
But does he just want 1 year in this league? You want your long-term guaranteed money. If he has a good 8-game stretch, let's say if he comes back and plays 8 games this season, if he goes somewhere where he can get the targets and he has 6-7 touchdowns to end the season, which is actually similar pace to what he did with the Rams last year. He could set himself up for a nice, not 1 year, 10 mil, but 3-year, 30, 33, $36 million contract. That could be the last contract he gets in his career. So it all depends on the motivation, but so that could play a part of it. But I was actually thinking Ravens before I said Bengals, Justin. So you read my mind on that one. So that was perfect.
Right.
Speaking
the Ravens, we'll move on to fact or fiction. And the question here is, the statement, here is, the Baltimore Ravens will clinch the division before they play the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 18.
Fiction. For me, fiction. We just said the injuries they have. Rashad Bateman is a big blow. Mark Andrews missing any game for this team is not good offensively. The running game, aside from Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards recently had a good game. I feel so bad for J.K. Dobbins. The kid can just not get and stay on the field. I feel rough for my heart goes out to him because I really do feel for him. But it's that the defense has gotten banged up on a number of times this season, and they've blown a lot of double-digit games. It's really weird to what to think about Baltimore. I know Cincinnati did lose Jamar, and I know that Cleveland game was just an absolute shellacking. But at the same time, I think Cincinnati can withstand their one injury compared to the number of issues Baltimore's had this season. I think that game, Week 18, right? Is that
Week 18, the final game of the season?
I think that Week 18 game is still going to be for God, the AFC North crown. Not the NFC North is a completely different team in purple, but the AFC North will be between the Ravens and the Bengals.
Look, I picked the Bengals preseason, and I think, all proclivity aside, I would, if I was keeping with that, I would say fiction. However, here's my thing. I'm looking at their schedules going down the line, going into Week 18.
I was going to bring that up. They don't play a single team with a winning record for the rest of the season, Jared.
They don't. I mean, the only team they play that does have a 500 record right now until the Bengals, aside from the Saints, is the Falcons. Like the Ravens, the Bengals have to play Tennessee, God help us, Kansas City, God help them, Tampa, and then New England and Buffalo before they get to Baltimore again.
There's only 2 teams I'm scared of on that list.
I realize that, but at the same time,
I know you don't like Tennessee, but
I'm not scared of them.
The way that they played the Browns, the way that the Bengals played against the Browns this past week, you have to think that they are not going to be able to put up the same kind of fight because the Tennessee Titans are built in a very similar way. They have a better defense. They're going to get after the quarterback, and they have that bruising running back in Derrick Henry.
For me, I think it sets up for them. If they can just stay healthy and they can just keep punching stride for stride, let Cincinnati be the team that falls off because Buffalo's on a mission. Tampa has to prove something. The Titans have to prove something still. And Kansas City is Kansas City. I mean, granted, you're not playing Kansas City at Arrowhead. You're hosting them, but can lightning strike twice?
They have that game scheduled circled though after the way they lost last season.
I was going to say, can lightning strike twice? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I picked Cincinnati to begin the season to win the AFC North because I said Baltimore. I wasn't sure about something with them, and it was their injuries, and obviously they're still banged up a little bit. If they get things right, they will go into Week 18 as the AFC North champions. But that also depends upon them because a lot of their games coming up, as many of those games are against under 500 teams, they're trap games. Like, look at how Jacksonville played the Giants. Look at how Denver's been playing. Denver's sneaky. They're going to be a spoiler. They have 2 games against Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
In close proximity to each other.
Who've beaten them the last couple of years when they've been better. Like, look, at the end of the day, the reason why I'm saying fiction is because this Baltimore team, to me, this is not a team that when they have it, they're going to go for the throat and finish it. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm not saying the Bengals are going to
I'm not asking if they're going to win a Super Bowl, but they have to be the favorite to win their division at this point.
But Justin, I'm not talking about – I don't even care about the Super Bowl. This team has blown more double-digit games than anyone else this season. They're out-falconing the Falcons in terms of double-digit leads blown.
Remember what I said last week?
Have it.
No one out-falcons the Falcons.
They do not have the killer instinct to finish their opponent, and I think they're going to play down to their competition more than once or twice here. I don't think this group has that mentality in them to – if they go undefeated, okay, they prove me wrong. But this team right now, that mentality that I'm seeing, they don't have it in them to just completely roughshod over this entire schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose 1 or 2 of these games in another just utterly, like, breathtakingly, in a bad way, manner. They don't have it in them. Like, I don't – look, it's cool. You guys have the confidence. I don't have the confidence in them that they are these sudden killers who are going to go on a 6-game winning streak now.
Hey, I begrudgingly have the confidence.
Hey, listen, there's 2 teams in the NFL that have led every single game by at least 10 points. One of them is 7-0, and one of them is 5-3.
Aren't the Eagles 8-0 now?
Yes, you're right. They're 8-0 now.
Well, again, that was the Texans. We knew that was going to happen anyways.
Yeah.
All right, the next one. The San Francisco 49ers are a top 3 team in the NFC.
Oh, fiction. If you said top 5, I would agree. I'd say fact. But top 3, here's the thing with me. I'm looking at the standings right now, and I'm looking at the way the teams are playing. Philadelphia is a juggernaut. I think we can agree on that. Philadelphia is clearly there. You know what?
They're number 1.
You know what? Dallas is up there too. They just got Dak Prescott back. They're still winning games. They're a good team. The only thing that's going to keep them from being a top 2 team when the standings are final is that they play in the same division as Philadelphia, who's probably going to win and be the number 1 seed. Is it between Minnesota and San Francisco? Sure, but just the way that Minnesota has kind of bought in to Kevin O'Connell's system and to this new mindset really has struck me. They've been a big surprise this year. And I think they're probably, I would say, number 3 in my book. San Francisco's a close number 4, I think. Christian McCaffrey, that pickup does push them up higher. I mean,
He's made a difference.
He's made a significant difference for them. Can it be sustained? The big thing with CMC is his injury history. That's the big key. That's the big risk you take.
That's the big key with everyone on the 49ers.
Exactly. So I can't put them top 3 yet until I know for sure they're all healthy, but they're close. They're a very close number 4. They might win their division, suck at Geno Smith, but they might win the division.
They already have one head-to-head win against them.
Geno Smith did not deserve that shot at the end.
Yes, he did.
No, just because you picked against him and he burned you.
Listen,
several times. God damn it,
so
Gino.
Rick's got the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Vikings in his top 3. Are the 49ers in yours?
Yeah, I'll go fact, actually. I think, using injury is so difficult because I feel like half the teams and half the players we've mentioned in this episode, we could say, well, if they're healthy. So I think put the injury aside. I think the 49ers are a battle-tested team. We forget they were below 500, I think, 8 games through the regular season last year, and this group was able to rally and make it to the playoffs and made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. And I'm not talking about a team that lost half of its roster going into this year. No, a lot of those guys are still there, and guys are still around, and they got CMC, who makes them better. I think for all intensive purposes, if we are to assume that both sides of the ball stay healthy, they are a top 3 team, because I think if that defense is 100% healthy, I think they could wreck the Minnesota Vikings in a game. I really do. I do think so.
So what's your top 3 then?
So yeah, that I said fact. So
what is your top 3?
Oh, just replace the Vikings with the 49ers. I agree with you. I got the Eagles and the Cowboys as my top 2, and the 49ers are there. Because also, I think if we're talking about come to the playoffs as well, this is probably the most playoff experienced team out of all those guys in conjunction with success. The look, we all have our opinions on Jimmy Garoppolo, myself included. I've made no bones about it. They just find a way to win, and when they make the playoffs, they find a way to make it far. I can't explain it. I don't think any of us can explain it. This is a team we want to see him get traded. We wanted to see what Trey Lance could do with a full season, and yet Jimmy G finds his way back. This team has made it to a Super Bowl. They made it to an NFC Championship game. Both times they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion. Well, you kind of have to when you make it to the Super Bowl if you don't win the game. When they go deep in the playoffs, the Super Bowl champion has to beat the San Francisco 49ers. So, and I can see the Eagles and the Cowboys doing it relatively comfortably. I can't see the Vikings doing that with relative comfort. I don't see it. I still need to see a little bit more from this team because, look, I don't care if the joke is old. I don't think the joke is old. I think it's a fact. Kirk Cousins is very up and down. I need to see him in a playoff game. I need to see him properly dominate. And this would be the type of team to do that with a head coach who's brought this team far several times, with a quarterback who's brought this team far, and with a defense that, for all intents and purposes, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, good pieces. So, fact. 49ers right now, to me, top 3 team in the NFC.
All right. Interesting. I like that you guys went separate on that one. Here's the last one. This was what I thought was going to be the most divisive. Tua Tagovailoa is a top 8 quarterback in the NFL.
We're talking about right now or at the end of the season?
Right now, today, this season.
Jalen Hurts.
Josh Allen. Mahomes.
Burrow?
Who?
Burrow?
I'd give him top. Ever since that Steelers game, he's only thrown 2 interceptions.
Okay. So Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Geno.
I mean, come on now.
Put him on one side. Put him on one side for a second.
Yeah.
Garoppolo.
One side.
One side. Okay. Trying to think. Herbert, no, because he's been hurt and lackadaisical. Tannehill.
Well, he got hurt, and they still won.
Right.
So, no.
Well, no, he had the stomach bug. So, different. But, yeah. I'm trying to think. Mariota, probably not. No. Lamar, of course.
So 5 definitive.
Cousins.
I'd give it to him.
So I think we have a clear top 5, maybe a clear top 6, but then I think you're questioning Gino, Garoppolo, and Tua. 7, 8, 9.
Right.
And
Got it.
And Taylor Heineke 10 because God damn it, yes.
Sam Ellinger number 11, clearly.
Okay, wait. He hasn't done a whole heck of a lot. Daniel Jones. He hasn't done a whole heck of a lot, but he hasn't made mistakes.
I just think it's so much circumstance that's led to that.
I did too, but
I think of all the quarterbacks that we're stating that we're on the fence on, the one with the most circumstances breaking their way is Daniel Jones. Like, there's a reason, Rick. We just mentioned, like in the last Fact or Fiction about the 49ers, and we mentioned the Vikings. There's a reason why the Giants, I would assume they're your number 5 team in the NFC.
Yeah.
So it would be the same with me. They are winning in an unsustainable way, as Justin has the pose, like, paint me one of your French girls. The Giants are winning in an unsustainable manner where I understand Daniel Jones is playing good-ish. Like, he's not the reason they're winning games. Tua's at least had 1 or 2 games, that pun, that the Dolphins have won because, like, he's hitting the mark. Geno Smith is going to make the Seattle Seahawks Ring of Honor. That's already been decided. And once again, Jimmy Garoppolo is proving that by hook or by crook, if you put him in the lineup in San Fran, they're just going to win games. No one can.
But there's a question. What's your 7, 8, 9 then? If we established our top 6 of Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, Lamar,
I'm willing to put Tua at my number 7.
Well, let's look at some stats. First of all, Tua is currently 3rd in completion percentage across the league for quarterbacks that have played a minimum of 5 games. He's also top 10 in passing yards per game, and he has thrown 12 touchdowns. I believe he's also run for a couple. He obviously is benefiting from having some really good receivers, but in games where he started and completed the game, he's currently undefeated.
And also, like, he's actually throwing the ball down the field. And once again, look, Brian Flores, I know you did get done dirty by Stephen Ross at the end of your tenure. I do fully believe that. But both things can be true. Brian Flores got done dirty by Stephen Ross, but clearly he had no idea how to get the best out of Tua, and McDaniel does. And yes, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are a big reason that Tua is playing well, but he's like, they're actually letting him uncork the ball and let him throw it down the field. We didn't see that in Brian Flores' years now, in part because who thought Shane Gailey in 2020 would work as your offensive coordinator is beside me. And all due respect, in case Rick comes to Shane Gailey's defense, again, I emphasize 2020.
It must have been in Shane Gailey.
I would say Tua. I put him at my number 7. Between Geno and Jimmy, it's a toss-up. The fact Geno Swift's in the top 10 just makes me smile already. So I'll put Jimmy Garoppolo at number 8 because he came in like he started benched and then came in and this has done a pretty good job. Geno Smith, oh man, this is so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go Garoppolo, then Tua at number 8, and then I'll put Geno at 9, and then I'll put Taylor Heineke at 10 because that's how I feel about things. But is he a top 8 quarterback? Yeah. And you know what the thing is too? I think, he missed 2 games. He's still almost at 2,000 yards passing. If he played those 2 games, if he was healthy, I think he would probably be top 5 in yards too. Yeah. So I think, and I know yards is a stat of conjecture because Tom Brady's number 2 in passing yards. That's because he has no running game to do anything with. So I mean, I think it's only fair. But yeah, I'd say he's top 8. I think right now he's at the bottom of the top 8. I would say
that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. And hey, still, look, if you had told the Dolphins, hey, Tua's going to play like a top 8 quarterback this season, they'll take that. They'll take that in a heartbeat. So
absolutely,
I think
they have a chance at the division.
See, it might be tough because the little bit of time that Tua missed, including that Jets game, if the Bills beat the Jets, then I think. But the Dolphins did beat them. When do they face off? Do they face off in Week 18? Dolphins Bills or is that
Dolphins Jets is Week 18?
Dolphins Jets is Week 18.
Yeah, okay. Dolphins Bills is Week 15,
Right,
week
and
before Christmas.
that's in Buffalo. I know they technically have a chance, but I just think Buffalo, they've put it together. They made an addition that we'll mention here in a couple of moments. I think Buffalo should still be the favorite to win the division, but it's similar to last season when New England kind of scared us for a little bit. Like, oh, is Bill Belichick's dark magic going to bring them to the division somehow? Like the Dolphins will make us think for a little bit, but Buffalo probably should win that division relatively handily.
The way it's going to shake out, Miami's going to be the 5, but they're going to be a very scary 5.
Yeah.
That
Oh yeah.
that fourth division winner is going to be wetting their pants at bedtime the night before.
Who is that? Who would be the fourth division winner right now?
As of right now, the fourth division winner would be Baltimore.
Ooh, that rematch.
That rematch would be lovely. That would be lovely. Thank you very much.
Make it happen.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the end. Well, we have fun all show, but that's the end of the fun specific portion. We went over an hour with the games in part because we went off in a number of different places where we talked about Cordell Stewart. We talked about God knows what on this episode, like how me and
We were
Justin
a little all over the place.
we really were. But hey, that's the fun of it. But we'll make up a little bit of time here because there are a couple trades that are due some conversation, but the rest not so much.
really.
Yeah. So let's begin. Like I said at the top of the episode, trades galore happened, ladies and gentlemen. Last week was not the end of it. We had plenty more. There are a couple of trades more in particular that we are going to talk about here. So let's get straight to it. Let's get the easy ones out the way, and let's just stick with one of the teams we've been discussing a lot here in the last like 20 minutes or so. The Buffalo Bills, simple trade with the Indianapolis Colts. They traded a conditional 6 in Zach Moss for Nyheim Hines, getting him from the Colts. Rick, I think, we've been talking about what Buffalo could do to add to this team in terms of adding skill position. Not necessarily, he hasn't been used as a runner, especially this season, but in terms of receiving, Nyheim Hines can still be that pass catcher out the backfield. What'd you make of that trade?
Yeah, it adds a third running back into that room, or a fourth running back, really, if you count Tywan Jones. But the rookie, James Cook's been pretty solid. Devin Singletary needed a foil, and the Buffalo offense needed somebody else to kind of carry a lot more of the load, I think, on their running game because their passing game is unearthly. But their running game has always been kind of, late catch to the party. I think they're like that party guest that arrives an hour and a half late and, drops their keys into the nacho cheese bowl instead of the actual key bowl where everything is. I think it's a great trade. I really do. I mean, the Colts are not good, and I think that's, a problem. And I'm going to quote the great Pat McAfee here. I think Nyheim Hines, the dog. I think he's a very, very good running back. And I think this is an excellent add for a team that needed to get better in some way. And I think they added the right piece. They added a no-nonsense, straight running back who's really going to put this offense onto another level, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. Justin, what'd you make of it, the Nyheim Hines deal to Buffalo?
My question is, are they kind of moving away from Devin Singletary? Because it's a very similar style of player. It'll take off some of the weight that's been on his shoulders, but if you've been watching them in obvious passing downs, when they want him to run the ball and maybe run the clock and get things going there towards the end of the game, he hasn't been efficient. Nyheim Hines will be a little bit better. I think he's a little bit more of a punishing, bruising back, carrying the ball out of the backfield than Singletary has been in his career. And he does that same thing where he's excellent if you just want him to leak out and catch a short 2-3 yard pass and turn it upfield. So my question is, obviously, as of right now, Singletary is a starter, but for how long? Especially if they get James Cook going like they did in that Packers game.
I don't think he's going to be a starter for that long because if you look at the Buffalo running attack right now, they only have 4 total touchdowns. 2 of them are by Josh Allen. One of those by James Cook, and one's by a wide receiver, McKenzie. Like, Singletary has no rushing touchdowns.
No, he's got a couple receiving, but still.
Nyheim Hines, though, can do both.
Yes.
And that's why they put him in.
Nyheim Hines will be a more efficient runner, and that's why the lookout is
I think we see him tomorrow against the Jets, and I think we'll see him kind of gash. I know the Jets defense has been good, but Nyheim Hines is a different beast.
Also, it'll be interesting to see how Buffalo really utilizes him because, I mean, the Colts fired their offensive coordinator for a reason. This is not the same Colts team that we are used to when it comes to a running game. Like, Jonathan Taylor's been a little bit banged up this season. Even when he's played, he hasn't always been impressive, and they just have not figured out how to use Nyheim Hines. Like, they had an amazing balanced rushing attack going into the season. Hasn't looked that balanced this year, and I don't understand how they messed that up between Taylor and Hines. I thought they had something great going. clearly it's time for a change. Happy for Zach Moss. Hopefully he gets some opportunities in Indy. He's a decent running back. I think Buffalo's GM himself even said that like Moss, a guy that they really had a lot of faith in, and they no ill will towards him. They hope the best for him in Indy as well. So it's going to be
Might
interesting
get
to
some
see.
heavy carries this week also because apparently JT is probably going to be out.
There you go. So hey, kid will get a quick opportunity to prove himself in Indianapolis really quick in a game against the Patriots. I think they're facing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there we go. All right. Couple wide receivers got dealt in this deadline. We'll talk about the team that made 2 deals here really quick. I don't think there will be too much conjecture. Chase Claypool was traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Chicago Bears for a second-round pick, a.k.a. Ryan Poles got fleeced. And the Steelers also made a deal to get William Jackson III and they also sent a conditional 7th round. William Jackson and a conditional 7th round pick from Washington in exchange for a conditional 2025 6th round pick. The fact that we are trading away 2025 picks now is kind of humorous to me. Justin, I'll throw it to you because obviously the Chicago Bears got an A+ for the Chase Claypool trade. Tell us why Chase Claypool is going to lead them to the Super Bowl this season, according to the excitement you were giving us in text. You're muted, Justin. He doesn't realize
he is so excited because he's muted and he can't even.
I was very excited. I
Continue.
forgot to mute myself. Yeah, look, I wouldn't have given them an A+ for this trade. It does seem like kind of a mixed signals thing to me because you're trading away your top defensive talent who's got, a year or 2 left on their contract and getting 2nd and 4th round picks. And then you're using your own picks, which are probably going to be higher value, to trade for guys that also have 1 or 2 years left on their contract. And I know this is a move to help out Justin Fields. They're really turning around and saying, all right, he's played decent the last couple of weeks. He's played pretty well. What happens if we give him some weapons? So is this going to help them, light the world on fire? No. But the NFC's not been competitive. There's only 4 teams with a winning record, and one of them is not even one of the divisions doesn't have one. So at 3-5, maybe they could compete. If Justin Fields is truly being the guy there, and the defense is playing well, and you think you have linebackers to replace those young guys that you traded, why not go out and get Justin Fields a weapon and see if you can put some points on the board? And Claypool's that guy. I think that Claypool is worth a 2nd round pick, believe it or not, to the right team. So I was also told that the Packers did offer a 2nd round pick as well, but the Bears won up them by offering their own 2nd round pick as opposed to the ones they received from the Ravens. So yeah, Claypool will be good there. He's a good big receiver. He runs good routes. He's got good body control. He should be able to help out alongside Darnell Mooney and the rest of that receiving core. They are young, and the only argument I can make for it is proven production is better than taking a chance in the draft. It's got to be the MO of the Bears GM right now.
Well, and the biggest thing to add into this one too, Justin, you made all those great points with Claypool, which I totally agree. But think about it like this: the Bears stopped Green Bay from getting another wide receiver. They turned to Green Bay and went, So the Packers, who need a wide receiver, Claypool was, I think, clearly the number 1 target, and Chicago got him. Yeah. Like, that's a win for the Bears in themselves. And I think, look, we'll talk a bit about their defense too, maybe later, but the fact that they were able to turn a pick that they received in a prior trade for Chase Claypool, in a way, is a good thing for this team. And you're right, they needed a weapon on offense. Claypool's the guy you can build around. Like, he's a guy you can draft some other younger wide receivers on and have him kind of become that number 1 target for Justin Fields. And you're right, it is absolutely bringing Justin Fields into the mold, saying, we believe in you. Now go win us some games. You put up 29 against Dallas, and I know some of it was garbage time, but prove it. You have a weapon now. Let's go see what you can do.
And Justin Fields has also played better since the horrendous start to the season. So that is worth noting. I think he has at least 1 touchdown in 4 straight games or something along those lines, which, I mean, is nothing spectacular. It's nothing spectacular, but for the Chicago Bears and their offense, that's kind of an achievement.
I feel like every Justin Fields game report should have a sticker on saying, you did it.
Yeah. All that pressure on Nathaniel Hackett. I hear no one talking about Matt Eberflus and how he should be fired. Anyways, I mean, Steelers, not the only AFC North team. Yes, I think Matt Eberflus should be fired, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I disagree with you.
Yeah. Going further, well, I mean, you kind of made reference to the trade, Rick, so we might as well just stay on it with the Chicago Bears. Steelers, not the only AFC North team that the Bears did some dealings with. They traded with the Baltimore Ravens. They didn't get a player back, though. They sent a player away, Roquan Smith to Baltimore. I read it was a second and a fifth. So a second and a fifth for Roquan Smith. Rick, what did you make of that deal? We understand from Chicago's side, they make that trade because I think they owed Roquan Smith the contract, and Ryan Poles, I guess, didn't want to pay him. In terms of, let's talk about it from the Ravens side. What does Roquan Smith add to that team?
Veteran leadership, and consistency, I think, are the two big things, because it's a team that, you have Calais Campbell and you have Jason Pierre-Paul, but they're, aside from Patrick Queen, who else were their linebackers, really? I mean, Malik Harrison's questionable. It adds another piece. It adds another tackling. It adds another ball hawk. And it adds somebody who you can bring in to be the next Ray Lewis, in a sense. Because Roquan Smith has that ability, has that talent. I think it stacks up their defense. It doesn't stack it up in an area that I thought they needed more. I really honestly am looking at that Ravens secondary and saying, what's going on here? But, again, all you have to do really is get to the quarterback and not have him have 5 or 6 seconds of time in the pocket. And that's what Roquan Smith can do. He can also tackle in the open field pretty well. So I like it for the Ravens. It was a good addition. It's, again, would I have made this move? Probably, but I also would try to get somebody else on the secondary, a defensive back. But it's a good move, and it's a good piece to plug in for Mike McDonald's defense.
Always a good thing to be able to add the NFL's leading tackler onto your team. And like you said, Rick, just the impact that he will make in terms of maybe costing the other team a second to get the ball off will help that secondary in and of itself. And I think with the secondary in Baltimore, like, they don't need the talent per se. I believe it was Marcus Williams who they lost for essentially the rest of the season.
Kyle Fuller's on the IR as well.
Kyle Fuller on the IR. So there are a couple pieces missing there, but I think for the most part, as long as the rest of the secondary can at least play, I think the Roquan Smith addition, it's something to say the least. Justin, any comments on what Roquan Smith? I mean, I think the potential, because of the way that Baltimore has always ran their defense. Rick mentioned like the tackling machine that he is, but Roquan Smith could, like, he's not known necessarily for collecting a ton of sacks when he was in Chicago, but he might surprise us in this Ravens defense. Ravens have a way of getting guys who aren't necessarily like pass rush first. Like, he can get 5 sacks within the next however many games for Baltimore.
Well, I mean, I might be wrong because I don't know too much about the Bears defense, but they don't strike me as one of those blitzing teams. They struck me as they're going to get pressure with 4 guys, and for the most part, and then they're going to sit back and you're going to get small gains. I mean, obviously their defense hasn't been great the last couple of years, especially since they traded away Khalil Mack in the offseason. But for me, all this says is that the Ravens know who they are. They got a guy that'll fit their system and will help mask some of their weaknesses. I mean, I'm sure that they were out calling for guys in the secondary over the trade deadline, and it didn't happen. So the only medicine for that, to me, is you're going to get a guy that, 1, is going to stop the run, and 2, is going to shave those seconds off the quarterback's time in the pocket. That's the only way to mask a bad secondary. Obviously, the kids that they signed and drafted have not worked out, and Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. I mean, they're not playing poorly, but they're not playing great at the moment. They're giving up a lot of air yards in Baltimore. So I think this move will help him, even if he's not a sack god there, which I don't think he will be. But you'll see improved production getting after the quarterback and the pressures and things like that, because 1, he's going to have more help than he did in Chicago, and 2, he's probably going to blitz more. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, interesting move made by the Ravens. A little bit unexpected, but hey, like, if you're going to make an unexpected move, why not get one of the more talented young defensive players in the game, to say the very least, and add him into the fold there? Which, again, Baltimore, they have a knack for making these defensive guys play well and get them their numbers. So let's see. Speaking of unique deals, it's probably the most unique deal that happened at the deadline. Jacksonville, they traded with the Atlanta Falcons, and quite the deal it was. The Jacksonville Jaguars get Calvin Ridley from the Atlanta Falcons. And, the conditions on this pick, they are plenty, lads. So the maximum, if all potential conditions are reached that Atlanta could get for Calvin Ridley are a fifth in 2023 and a second in 2024. This is the breakdown that I have here. If Calvin Ridley is reinstated by a certain date, it is a 2023 fifth rounder. Otherwise, if he's not reinstated by that specific date, it'll become a sixth. If he makes the team in 2024, then a 2024 pick comes into play. If he makes the team in 2024, it is a fourth round pick. If he hits playing time milestones, it is a third. And if the Jags sign him to a long-term deal, it is a second. So greatest potential 2023 fifth and 2024 second. What a trade made. Justin, first off, Calvin Ridley was literally out of sight, out of mind. I think everyone here completely forgot about him after we did our Falcons season preview. When you saw this deal, were you just like, huh? Why? What? What was your reaction?
I was confused. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked for them. I mean, obviously, this is not going to be their year. And their questions going forward now are, is Trevor Lawrence the guy? They went out and they signed some good receivers, but they don't have that big end zone target. Christian Kirk is a smaller guy. Zay Jones is a stretch the field guy. And Marvin Jones Jr. is not the guy that he used to be. So I think that they're thinking long-term when Calvin Ridley gets back, he's going to be that 6'2" guy that you're going to throw slants and outs to in the and jump balls to in the end zone. Which is something they've missed. And it's been an area of contention for Trevor Lawrence because lately he's been throwing a ton of interceptions in the red zone. If it works out and they could sign him, it's going to look like a genius move. It is. If he is not there by the end of next year, it's going to look like one of the worst trades in history, even with the lower compensation, because you traded 2 picks for a guy who hasn't played football in 2 years and was a guy that we had legitimate concerns if he wanted to play football anymore. That's part of the reason he was out. He had mental health issues because it wasn't worth all this effort and work for him anymore. He didn't care. He was betting on the games because he said it made it interesting. He didn't care about football at that level anymore. So it's a real gamble for Jacksonville. And there's not going to be an in-between. It's either going to be a fantastic trade or look at this idiot trading away draft picks for a player that's not going to play.
Right. Well, actually, to be fair, I think if he just decides to step away overall, I think it'll only just be the 6th round pick itself. So not
draft picks. The Jacksonville Jaguars currently have 2 wins. You need your 6th round picks. You need all the picks that you can get to try and get some new talent in.
Fair. Rick, what was your reaction? I feel like I saw your reaction the second that I brought it up. I know you want to speak something about this. What were your thoughts on the deal?
You ever pick up a choose your own adventure book and you get to the end and you're like, I want to go back and redo that whole thing and go the second way. That's basically what this was. I think I said this to you. This is when weird stats started coming up when I was a broadcaster in college. It was on the media guides they would put, how the basketball player shoots when the temperature in the arena is 57.9 degrees and the basket is facing 24 inches to the left and he's wearing size 12 shoes instead of size 13. It's what are we doing? I miss the one-on-one straight up trades. I miss that. Trent Baalke, you have confused me. You have irritated me to no end. And Justin, you're absolutely right about this. If this turns out to be for nothing, yeah, you pick up a 6th round pick, so great. You picked up the 3rd ranked punter from Northern Missouri State, basically, because that's who gets drafted in the 6th round, or you get Bo Melton from Rutgers in the 7th round. What does it matter? This trade just infuriated me because this was one of those deals where I was like, basketball or baseball where you're basically trading for the hope and potential that at some point you have a pick that might turn out to be something, but probably will be nothing in the end, or you might, lose it because Trent Baalke was tampering with somebody and that pick goes away, bye-bye, that sort of thing. It's ridiculous to me. If it works out, it could be great because it could be one of the great Renaissance stories if Calvin Ridley does come back and become the Calvin Ridley that he was when he was Julio Jones' Robin. But there's so much unknown that it's almost a case of why did we even do this? why did we sign Urban Meyer to be the head coach? Why did we make this trade? Jacksonville is down the Bermuda Triangle. Like everything in Jacksonville never comes out. So that's how it was.
That's a good one. I don't think I've ever heard anyone call the Jags that yet. I think we gotta put that on a T-shirt if we can.
Patented, trademark it.
Patented and trademark. We're filing that right away after this episode's finished. Yeah, no, I'm with you guys. It was certainly an interesting deal. I think Justin brings up the best point possible is that does Calvin really even want to do this anymore? Dude was suspended for a full year. He was made the example of being the first player caught gambling on his own sport. Like it's going to be one of those things. Does he want to do this? And I think that's going to ultimately be a big factor in what. You would hope and assume that the Jags management had some contact with Ridley before this, like while they were negotiating for this, and talked it out with him. But it's also Trent Baalke, so maybe I'm thinking too highly of him in that regard. Which finally Rick understands why I criticize Trent Baalke also much.
Death, taxes, and Trent Baalke lost his cell phone number.
Thank you. Well, more so you want to keep the phone away from Trent Baalke in instances like
that. He lost the number, so he couldn't call him to say, hey, you're on the Jags. He just was like, okay, you're on the Jags. Shot it into a paper bag and just let it go. That's basically what happened.
And it went all the way to Atlanta. I believe last two trades we need to go with here. Interdivision trade was made. The Detroit Lions trading TJ Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings. Detroit got an interesting package, to say the least. They got a 2023 second and fourth round pick. They also got a third round pick in 2024, and they got a conditional fourth round pick in 2024, with the condition being the fourth will become a fifth if the Vikings win a playoff game. Interesting condition there, to say the very least. Rick, your thoughts on TJ Hawkinson and the deal? Obviously, it makes sense because Irv Smith, we know he's out for extended periods on probably the whole rest of the regular season and maybe into the playoffs most likely. TJ Hawkinson, I mean, you were mentioning buying into Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell coming from an LA Rams team who not necessarily, like tight end wasn't necessarily the strongest position in LA, not necessarily the one that gets the most clout in the Sean McVay system. But at the same time, like when the tight ends make their presence felt, like they play very well. I could think of at least one game where Gerald Everett played really well for the Rams last season in the playoffs, and another tight end as well, whose name is just escaping me at the moment. And now O'Connell's getting a talent like TJ Hawkinson, easily the best tight end he's probably had to work with in a good little while. What does TJ Hawkinson add to the fold of that Minnesota Vikings team, who you were high on earlier offensively?
Well, earlier in this episode, yes. I mean, Detroit waved the white flag and cost me a Cole Strange jersey that we'll get into later on. I think Kevin O'Connell looked at his depth chart when Irv Smith went down and said, "Who's our tight end?" And the O coordinator said, "Johnny Munt." And Kevin O'Connell said, "Wasn't he on Freaks and Geeks or some TV show that lasted one season in 1999 2000? Like, who the hell is this guy? Get somebody in here who can actually catch the ball." And that's what Minnesota got in TJ Hawkinson. They needed the tight end because you don't have one. And you got arguably the best one you could have gotten. And you really took the sales out of Green Bay, because I think I'm going to go on record here. I think this trade has cemented the NFC North for Minnesota. I really do. Because it has added a piece that I think Irv Smith was good, but he wasn't. Hawkinson can catch 250 yards. He can have a game like that. What he did with Detroit, he's a talent. And Kirk Cousins has another weapon to use, and it helps that offense out tremendously. Minnesota's got a really good option. And for Detroit, look, it hasn't worked out. The thing that you have to understand with Detroit is that it was, and I take some fault in this too, it was year 2 of the Dan Campbell era. Hard Knocks happened. We were all gung-ho because we saw Dan Campbell on Hard Knocks, and it was amazing. It was hilarious. It reminded us of Rex Ryan. But the cupboard's kind of bare on that offensive side. And so now that you have more picks, you can probably add more weapons. There's a lot of good pieces that are coming out of college next year and the year after. So okay, you traded away the number 8 pick. All right, well, get somebody new in here. And again, for Minnesota, it was the right trade for them at the right time, because you couldn't have asked for anything better. One guy goes down, here's your new shiny toy, TJ Hawkinson. All right, excellent. Let's go win 10 more games.
Yeah. To say the least, Justin, throwing it over to you, Kirk Cousins actually have a pretty good track record when it comes to him and his tight ends. Late in Kyle Rudolph's career, he had a really good season. I think he made a Pro Bowl, at least one Pro Bowl when Kirk Cousins, after he got there. And in his time in Washington, Kirk Cousins and when Jordan Reed was healthy, that was also a pretty good connection as well. Jordan Reed healthy is a forgotten thing in this league, because Jordan Reed was a pretty good tight end for a little bit. to say the very least. So Kirk Cousins has a history with good, talented tight ends and making it work with them. And now he has T.J. Hockenson, probably the best one on paper that he has in terms of all the intangibles he could bring to it. I kind of a simple question here, and you can expand on it if you want. Are you with Rick? Does this essentially lock up the NFC North for the Vikings?
Well, it's a win now move for them, for sure. I mean, if you look at the weapons that they have now, it's got to be among the top in the NFL. I mean, you have Justin Jefferson, you have who's a top 5 receiver in my mind. You have Adam Thielen, who is an excellent, excellent number 2. You have Dalvin Cook, who is a fierce runner. Even Madison backing him up has played very well. And now you have a tight end that you have not had that caliber of tight end yet in Minnesota. It's going to be interesting to see because I feel like in the past, tight end production in Minnesota has been that kind of myth where it's like every year, Kyle Rudolph is going to be the guy this year. Irv Smith, I'm going to draft him high in my fantasy league. He's going to have a really good year this year. It never happened. Even Tyler Conklin, when he was there, it just production-wise, it didn't happen. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they use him more as a blocker. I did want to mention, by the way, Jurg, the trade was a second and a third, a 2023 second and a 2024 third for Hockenson, a 2023 fourth, and a conditional 2024 fourth that could become a fifth if they make the playoffs.
Huh. So
they actually just swapped picks, believe it or not. They got less back. To me, this is a head scratching move for Detroit. Hawkinson's 25 years old. You currently have the number 1 overall pick, and Jared Goff is not under contract next year. You are almost certainly going to draft a quarterback number 1 overall in a quarterback strong draft. Why are you trading young assets? And I mean, I know he's owed $9 million next year, and
that's
then
nothing.
Yeah. Well, it's a number that balloons because he's on his rookie contract. So I think he's getting paid just short of $1 million this year, and the next year he's going to get paid $9 million, and then he's got a team option. Why are you trading away young weapons, especially ones that can help protect and block, for a quarterback that you're bringing in for a first year next year? You have 2 first-round picks next year. And I get that maybe you could draft a tight end, but why if you don't need to? You're going to have the youngest, arguably most promising receiving core in the league with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams when he's healthy. You have Khalif Raymond, who's young and playing well. You have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, who are running the ball well, who will be under contract for you for the next couple of years. Why are you trading a young guy like TJ Hockenson for a second and a third?
The only thing that I can say, but the only thing that I can say potentially that may clear up this sort of thing, they picked up his 5th-year option at the beginning of the year. Maybe they don't want to pay him after this.
Why not? He's played excellent.
I agree with you, but they also drafted James Mitchell out of Virginia Tech in the 5th round this year as a tight end. So a cheaper option if they could try and mold him into something. I don't think they're going to, but it's a possibility.
I think, at least from my perspective, and this is just a general thing, this isn't with TJ necessarily, but when you have a team that, and I think Rick brings up the point here, if you need to ask yourself if you want to extend the guy, not if you should, if they had the debate internally on choosing whether to extend him or not after this season, then maybe it was the thing to trade him. Because look, like, organizations, sometimes when their mind is made up, their mind is made up. And if they somehow convince themselves to not give TJ Hockenson one more chance this season with a young quarterback that was going to be coming in, then that's on the organization for making that happen. And they thought, okay, let's send him out while we have this mindset. Is it potentially wrong? Probably. Like, I'm with you guys in terms of this, a 25-year-old that would have only been a positive for your young quarterback coming in, no matter who it is, whether it be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. There's technically speaking no reason. But the only ideology that I can sort of agree with is that if you need to question yourself on if you're going to extend him, then just trade him now, because that's just my thing. If you really have those questions, then get something back. If you're so dead set on we're not going to keep him in the long-term fold.
Let me add one more wrinkle into this too. 2019 when he was drafted, week 4 concussion. 2021 thumb surgery, December 17th. There's injury history there. So if you pay him big money and he has a major injury, I don't know if you're going to pay a tight end what you paid Christian Kirk, but the market's probably going to ask for something along those lines. for a young tight end who's got the production talent of that. And his injury history is not like McCaffrey's, I agree, but there is history there of it, especially for a tight end position.
Excuse me. Trade him next year then. Let him help develop your guy, and then if he's an issue or you don't want to pay him or he's not worth it and you're gonna draft, you have the draft picks. You've been acquiring draft picks.
But is the value there next year? If the value is not there next year, like if you only got a fourth and a fifth next year instead of the haul that you got this year, you missed out on another opportunity like that. Especially for a Lions team that I think their GM is kind of on that mold where they need to make these kinds of moves like now, and they need to show that they're actually capable of doing this. I mean, I think it's a case where, and again, this is Brad Holmes' second year. He's got to make moves that benefit the department down the line as their GM and vice president. So maybe that played into it as well.
Potentially, you never know. I mean, it's always an interesting thing when a young player ends up getting traded, especially one of TJ Hawkinson. How will it play out? I mean, I think we know how it's going to play out for Minnesota. How will it play out for Detroit? How will they replace him? That's a wait and see approach, but it'll certainly be interesting to see what Detroit is building there. You would assume that MCDC is going to get next year for sure. I know the Lions' record in and of itself isn't that impressive, but considering the energy on that team still, I don't think that his job is in peril, but I could see next season starting to be a year where they need to really put things in order and start to actually show some of the promise that made people think of them winning the AFC North this season in particular. I'm just saying. Moving on, really last team that made big moves here, Miami Dolphins. Of course, the big time deal that they made, getting Jeff Wilson from the San Francisco 49ers for a 5th round pick, and they also additionally made a trade for Bradley Chubb. That's probably a little bit more important actually. Bradley Chubb gets traded from the Denver Broncos. Him and a 2025 5th round pick. You mentioned it, Rick. Why are we just randomly adding late round picks in these deals? But Bradley Chubb and a 2025 5th rounder go to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for a 2023 1st rounder. Important to note that is the San Francisco 49ers 1st round pick that San Fran had sent to Miami in a previous deal. Is that 1st round pick Miami's own 4th round pick in 2024 and running back Chase Edmonds. And subsequently, the Miami Dolphins extended Bradley Chubb to quite a hefty payday, gentlemen. 5 years, $110 million, and 63.2 guaranteed. What a deal. Justin, I think Bradley Chubb was the name that we brought up at the end of the trade talk last week in terms of guys that could get moved. I forgot what you said, but because I know I brought his name up, I completely forgot what you said. So if you want to just give your analysis on the deal that happened, let us know. Bradley Chubb to Miami. What do you make of it?
I'm sad. I question life. Yeah, because now I'm gonna have to see him twice a year.
Technically, once this year. Only once this year.
One more this year, but they've twice a year for the next 5. Mm-hmm. And the dude's a good player. He was on arguably one of the top defenses in the league as their leader. I didn't have him being traded, I don't believe. Just because I thought the asking price was going to be too high, and 2, because the issue there wasn't defense. I would have thought that Denver might as well pay him. I know they do have a lot of young players that they're going to need to pay eventually, but you might as well keep your defense in form the way it's been, because that's not a problem you're having. You might as well keep that going. So I think it's a good move for Miami. I don't want to see him. I don't want to play against him. I think that this makes them better immediately, and I hate every second of it.
Good to know. Rick, your thoughts on the Bradley Chubb deal? Of course, Denver, understanding that this is probably a lost cause of a season, so they try to get a little bit of value from a guy who I believe he was entering free agency after this year, if I'm not mistaken. So Bradley Chubb going away, of course, important piece that they drafted many years ago. A couple injury issues here and there, but for the most part, we know that he is a force with pass rushing. Now he goes to Miami. What do you think of that move?
Copy and paste what Justin said for me, honestly.
Just pay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and give some analysis to it. I think it creates an interesting void for Denver on their defensive side because, as Justin mentioned, Bradley Chubb was their leader, and now it's Justin Simmons maybe Patrick Surtain the second, I guess. I don't really know who it benefits for Denver. I mean, granted, yeah, probably would have to pay the guy a lot. Miami, it helps them because it gives them like a formidable linebacker in their core. This is still a team that can give up a lot of points, though. I don't know if Bradley Chubb is the answer to that because, I mean, look, they gave up 38 to the Ravens in a win, 40 to the Jets, 27 to the Lions. Does Bradley Chubb being there make them a better defense? Sure. Does it immediately help them in an area where I think they need an area to be helped the most? I don't really think so. I think it's adding a name. It's adding a good name, but it's adding a name because the corners on Miami have really let me down this year, I think. And so will it help? Again, it's the same thing as Roquan Smith. I thought Miami was like Baltimore. They needed to add somebody in the secondary. They added a guy who could probably be a good run stuffer and can help out with pressuring the quarterback. But if you're facing a mobile quarterback, it doesn't really help you when your corners aren't doing their job. So it's painful, but I'm trying to look at it in a different way because, hell, the Jets beat the Dolphins once this year. They could probably do it again. Why not? Let's see what happens.
Yeah, who knows? And I think to your point, I think the biggest thing you pointed out was the fact that very similar to Baltimore, this was not necessarily a trade that helps the defensive back room in terms of bringing another name there, but this is a guy who can help shave off probably even more than a second, more so than Roquan Smith in terms of being able to be a pass rusher. And I think that's what Miami valued because Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, I think at least one of them has missed time this season. I think the other has just played hurt throughout the majority of the season. So
I think they both did. Xavier Howard, I think, was questionable, and he was actually out for the Jets game, and Byron Jones has been out for weeks.
Yeah, so this is a Miami secondary that I think they could. I mean, could they have used another member in the secondary for sure? But is it also useful for the fact to get a guy that could make the corners have to work a little bit less? Also potentially a thing. I mean, between them and Baltimore, kind of two similar acts, two different acts with a similar idea behind it, and the big contract extension immediately for Bradley Chubb. I thought they were going to wait and see for it to play out because Bradley Chubb, like I mentioned, does have a little bit injury history as well, very similar to like some of the guys, especially T.J. Hawkinson, we just finished talking about. They had a guy there. They immediately extend him. Kind of shows a bit of a regime change in Miami. I think for Denver, the value is getting that first round pick back in the fold for themselves, especially because they don't have their first this year because they traded for a certain $245 million overrated quarterback. So they get a first round pick back in the fold. Even if it's not going to be the best one, assuming San Francisco, A, makes the playoffs and B, goes on a deep playoff run. Not the best, but hey, you at least got a first round pick. We understand the value of the first round pick in today's game. It's going to be one of two ways. It could either get you players that you want in the F them picks mentality, or it could get you guys through the draft where you got that extra fifth year option, which slowly becomes more and more valuable, especially I think towards the back end of the draft in particular. That's it. That is the majority. That's the rest of the big trades that happened. We talked about all the other ones last week in the like of Kadarius Toney and Christian McCaffrey and trades like that. What an active trade deadline, to say the very least, guys. But it also means that there were teams that were not a bit active. So I'm going to go very rapid fire here. So I want the answer as quick as it can be from each of you. I'm just going to go one at a time. I got a list of teams and players that didn't end up getting moved here. Just very brief thoughts on why did this team not make a move, or why this player you thought didn't get moved. I'm not going to mention Brandon Cooks because I think that one is more obvious. He has the $18 million money that was essentially all but guaranteed for next season that I guess teams were just scared off by. So that's why he didn't get moved. I got a couple other names here really fast. I'm going to go one at a time. Rick, I'm going to throw it to you first. Why did Kareem Hunt not get moved?
I have no idea. He's a guy that was always going to be behind Nick Chubb, and he's a talented running back. I just don't know if there was a good enough haul to get him or to bring him to your team. I think there could have been teams that could have definitely used him. I think Atlanta would have loved to have had him to give Cordero Patterson some extra time to recover and give Tyler Allgeier or somebody to split carries with. I really don't know. I mean, Kareem Hunt's salary wasn't exactly that crazy. I think what was it? His remaining salary this year was $3.1 million, so that's manageable. I guess they have plans for him, but I think what we're going to see with a lot of these teams and a lot of these players is that calls were made, the deals just weren't correct for the deals to be made.
Very fair. Very fair. Justin, to you, you were wrong about Bradley Chubb being moved. What about Jerry Jeudy? He was actually a guy that I heard a couple times in trade rumors up to the deadline. Why do you think the Broncos held on to Jerry Jeudy?
The asking price was too high. I don't think they were wanting to move him. I thought that maybe they would have um if the price was right, so to speak, but it wasn't. They were probably asking for more than what the Bears traded for Claypool. There was cheaper guys out there that fit the mold, and he wasn't the guy that they were going to overpay for.
Fair, very fair. And I believe I don't think he's a free agent yet. I think he's a free agent 2 years from now. So there's still some value there for Denver.
And by the way, I think that's why Kareem Hunt didn't get traded also. I think he's a free agent after this year, and the asking price was too high. There were cheaper guys out there.
Very fair, very fair. I mean, we mentioned it. Jeff Wilson for a fifth-round pick, and Jeff Wilson could actually really help Miami down there, especially with his
for 6 and Zach Moss
familiarity and 99, so we talked about. So 2 good moves there. Rick, so those are just 2 notable players that didn't get named, 1 team for each of you. Rick, we mentioned the Green Bay Packers that got outbid for Chase Claypool. We know the Los Angeles Rams apparently made some overtures out to the Carolina Panthers, apparently for Brian Burns, apparently offering 2 first-round picks. I don't know how they were able to offer 2 first-round picks. That is like 7 presidential terms from now, but they were somehow able to in that deal. Did it surprise you that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so we're talking about NFC teams who we had high expectations for, who have underperformed so far. Packers at least tried for Chase Claypool. Rams tried a little bit. Why did the Buccaneers, I didn't hear anything from them. Why do you think the Buccaneers didn't or maybe couldn't make a trade?
Because I feel like in some capacity, in some way, they think that they're okay. Because I feel like they're a team that the way that their division is shaken out, they can still win the division with the guys that are on their roster. And yeah, I mean, they've got a bunch of guys on IR. Their wide receiving room after Mike Evans isn't spectacular, but they're a team that I think still has the division fully in their hands and fully in their sight. And I think they didn't really need to add anybody. They probably looked at this class and said, you know what, we're good. We don't really want to bring in somebody for a half-season rental, just to have, for Tom Brady to possibly throw the ball to or throw away from at some point, and just wasn't really – the market didn't really suit Tampa Bay making a significant deal of this regard for any of those players or, even picks at that point. I think it was a good option for them. I think that they know that they're still in the division, which is a terrible division, but they're still in the hunt for it. And they're probably going to win it, but they didn't need to add anybody because when push comes to shove, you're still going to have Tom Brady and Mike Evans in the playoffs. So, yeah.
Very fair, very fair. Justin, last team I'm going to bring up only because the idea, and I know I mentioned it last week with this team, that the teams in the NFL don't really go for a full down, tear down. They at least keep a couple names. I'm not surprised with some of the names they kept, but there was still, I think, a veteran or 2 on that team that could have potentially moved. Why do you think the Carolina Panthers, do you think they didn't explore any trades with some of the older guys, at least such as a Shaq Thompson on that roster, who I think they very much could have potentially moved?
I think that a lot of their guys were signed for a couple of years. So yeah, I understand what you're saying as they could have moved these guys because they're not necessarily going to be there for when the rebuild is complete. But if the asking price wasn't right and people were distracted by all of these other young guys that they thought, hey, maybe we can get for, we could, swindle the Panthers into trading up some top level talent the way that the teams were asking for Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore and all those guys. So if they were asked for, I'm sure they were a much lower price because they were trying to bump up the asking price for the young guys. And listen, they'll ask next year. Some of these guys will get moved.
Yeah.
Just didn't line up this trade deadline.
Very much so. Hey, maybe they were just waiting for the end of that Falcons game because they were a DJ Moore helmet throw away from being first in the NFC South on the season. What a time that would have been.
You keep blaming DJ Moore, man. That kicker's got to hit one of those.
I'm not saying I'm blaming DJ Moore.
One of those.
I'm not saying I'm blaming DJ Moore. I'm just saying it happened. They were also 2 kicks away, I guess, as well. All right, moving on. That's all the trade deadline talk. To one of our 2 main events, the co-main event of the show. Of course, the pick challenge, the Sports Agents of Chaos pick challenge. If you have been on the show if you've watched our show for a good while now, you know how this works. Very brief summary. The four of us end up picking 4 games on the week for us to get a point value out of. You have to pick at least one upset pick. You're able to pick a tie if you want to for the hell of it, but that has to be your 4-point pick. As Justin shakes his head.
We should find an under-over for when Rick starts picking ties.
Oh my God! Oh, you already know it's going to happen late in the season when he's just given up at this point. And
Stop
of course,
picking the freaking Washington Commanders as your 4-point game.
But of course, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest and most important thing of this is all for pride. This is all for personal glory. This is all for someone has to pay off a punishment at the end of this. We actually still have no idea what the punishment is. We know Rick has to already buy a Cole Strange jersey considering how his standings predictions have gone. We don't have a punishment for this. I think at this point he just wants to get above the deer. So that being said, also noteworthy, the lines we are going off of based off of the upset pick range are what is given to us via ESPN from their friends at, Justin?
Caesars Sportsbook.
Thank you, my friend. So let's get on with it. The way we do it is for our pick order, it is a snake format, and we are going based off of the rankings so far on the season, which means currently the first overall pick will be made by the man who survived a deer attack last week. Rick, you can give us the point standings right now, and then you can make your first pick.
Justin leads with 50 points. Jurg is second with 47. And then Sandoval, the deer, the 31. I'm at 24. Curiously, though, Justin, the only game I won last week was the 4-point game, and I did pick off. Well, I mean, you can knock it all you want, but Taylor Heineke's on a 3-game winning streak here.
It was close.
It was, but a win is a win. We're not playing with the odds. Okay. There were 3 games that I was thinking about on my 4-point pick, but 2 of them are touchstones, landmines for different reasons. The Kansas City-Tennessee game, somehow Kansas City is almost a 2-touchdown favorite, but they have the same record as Tennessee, which to me makes no sense.
Tannehill is questionable. They're not sure he's going to play.
Fine, but just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. The Chiefs have one of the worst rush defenses in the league.
If they fall down by 2 touchdowns, you can't just hand off the ball to him.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying. The other one is Buffalo and the Jets. I get it, but, it's always a game that's a little sneakier. That could be – the individual games are a little sneakier for me. That would be an obvious one. I think this one's a little obvious as well, but I'm going to roll with it because I feel confident in that this is going to be a 4-point win for me. I'm going to take the Dolphins over the Bears. And 4 points. I think the addition of Bradley Chubb is going to frighten Justin Fields. No matter how many times he can throw to Chase Claypool, he's still going to be rushed. And the Dolphins' offense is really good. I mean, the Bears surrendered 49 points to Dallas of all teams last week with Prescott back. I don't know. They might hit a 50 burger this week for Miami. I'll take the Dolphins, my 4-point pick.
Fair enough. The Dolphins favored by 4 over the Chicago Bears. Game is in Chicago, in case anyone was wondering. Justin is my pick.
No, it's not to you. It's to you, Jurg.
I know. That's why I said Justin. It's my pick. I gotta remind Justin. I gotta keep him ready.
Yeah, you gotta keep me on my toes.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I gotta keep him on the side. Look, he's just lounging back. Like, come on now. He's just relaxing.
Sick. Leave me alone.
You're the producer of the show, and you're picking on a sick kid. Come on now.
Hey, that's how show business goes sometimes. Look, whether it's Malik Willis or Ryan Tannehill, I really don't care. I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs for my 4-point pick.
Yeah, Rick, just so you know, the Kansas City Chiefs have the 3rd best rush defense in yards per game and the 2nd best in rush touchdowns. They've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns this season, and they have allowed under 100 rushing yards per game. They're at 92.
It's still Derrick Henry to me, though. I mean, it's still Derrick.
Listen, I'm not saying that Derrick Henry's not going to have 110 yards and a touchdown at least.
He might.
What else is he going to do? There's only so much you could do without a quarterback there.
Listen, McCaffrey threw a touchdown pass. Henry could throw 2 today. This week, you never know.
Very true. And he has done it before, actually.
Yes,
honestly, Derrick Henry can put up 150 yards and a touchdown, and the Chiefs might still win this game because whether it's Malik Willis or Ryan Tannehill, I'm not trusting that quarterback for the life of me. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs for my 4-point pick. I'm keeping it simple. Justin, back-to-back picks go to you.
Shit.
Sir.
You guys
sir,
really...
swear jar.
I can't. You know why? Because you guys put me in that position again.
You don't have to do it.
But I know I don't want to do it. I can't. It is my rule. I do not bet on Jets games.
Well,
but for you guys to both pass that up,
it sounds like a you problem.
It is a me problem. It is a me problem. I don't want to bet on the Jets. I don't want to bet against the Jets. But that's by far the most sure thing of the games that are left there.
Is it though?
Yes.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
I think I know where Rick is going with this.
So.
Okay.
As a 4-point pick, I'm going to avoid it and go with the Vikings.
Okay.
But I think I got to take it as my 3-point pick. I'll bet on the Bills.
Oh wow.
The worst thing that'll happen is that the Jets will win, and I'll be happy if that's the case. So I'll take the Bills.
Wow. So
As my 3-point
Vikings.
pick.
So Vikings are your 4, Bills are your 3.
Yeah.
Okay. He really did not want to make that pick.
I did not want to make that pick.
Oh, that's funny. This is just funny. All right. Look, I know me and Rick have been trying our best to stay to what our preseason predictions were. We really have been, ladies and gentlemen. And I had this team as a wild card team, but dang it, this is a chance for the Ring of Honor claim to go even further because the Cardinals are favored in this game by 2. Give me the Seattle Seahawks with my 3-point pick. We going for it.
Oh, merciful Neptune. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, puts me in a very interesting spot here because I obviously have back-to-back picks, and one of them's got to be an underdog pick. Now, I have 4 underdogs left on the docket here. I'm going to pick a favorite of my 3-point game. I'm going to go Cincinnati over Carolina as my 3-pointer. I know that Jamar Chase is still out, but come on, Carolina's a train wreck this year. So I will take Cincinnati.
Shout out to PJ Walker, though.
Yeah, good on you, PJ. My 2-point pick, my upset special, I'm tossing up between 2. See, one of the games that I'm tossing up with shouldn't be a game that's this terrible, but both of the teams have been awful this year.
Oh, I think I know who you're going with.
The other one is a battle between 2 teams who preseason we said were going to be really, really interesting to watch because it was a defensive battle due to the fact that they both have new defensive coordinators. As a Monday night game, and if I want to last through here, you know what? I'm taking the Saints over the Ravens at 2.
Wow.
That's my upset pick. Bateman's out. They didn't add a wide receiver. I don't know who else is on their offense. They don't have J.K. Dobbins. The game is in New Orleans. Taysom Hill, Swiss Army knife that he is. Really good defense for the Saints. They've had some bad luck this year. I can see New Orleans pulling this one out on Monday Night Football. Unpredictability aside, I'll take the Saints in my 2-point upset pick. Jerk to you.
Look, this team they need this to turn their season around, and it's a 1-win team that they're going against. I'll go with the Green Bay Packers. If there's one thing they've at least proven, they can at least beat the underbelly of the NFC North still. That's the only thing that they have going for them this season. They beat the Bears once. This is their first game against the Lions. Lions just traded away TJ Hawkinson. That Packers defense is actually underratedly good still. Like, the Packers defense has done their job. It is everything and everyone involved with the offense that has not, aside from Aaron Jones. Shout out to Aaron Jones. He's done his job. So I'm going to give the Packers this one because if they're going to save their season, it starts right now because they still have some very tough games ahead on their schedule. So give me the Packers in this one.
Crucially, Detroit's receiving leader, according to ESPN right now, is vacant.
Is St. Brown hurt, or is that just a glitch on the website?
Probably a glitch on the website.
Yeah,
but they have no receiving leader. This point. Justin, double pick.
All right. I got to go with an upset pick here. And I'm going to choose a legit upset. It's a team that's actually done very well against the spread this year. And the team that they're playing, even though are coming off of a bye, are more banged up than when they went into it. They have Austin Eckler on the injury report now with a core injury. They have Keenan Allen, who's probably not going to play. Mike Williams, who's definitely not going to play. They're elevating receivers in the practice squad. Their offensive line has been rough. Herbert is hurt. And the Falcons are feisty. They're just a feisty team. So I'm gonna pick the Falcons as my upset pick. And now I don't know where to go because you guys both chose the 2 other games that I was looking for.
Vegas, Jacksonville, Indy, New England, and LA, Tampa are your remaining three.
Yeah. I really don't want to pick an LA. I don't want to pick the LA Tampa game. I do have the Bucks winning that game, but I'm not sure that that's the direction I want to go. I definitely don't want to touch the Raiders Jaguars game. I don't like either one of those teams at any point.
Don't tell me you're picking the Patriots.
That's the only other one. I think the Patriots winning is a more sure thing. I mean, there's no JT. They're starting Sam Ehlinger. That's probably what I'm leaning to. See, the funny thing is, I was actually going to pick the Panthers if that game was still there. I like the way they match up. I think they match up very similar the way the Browns do, but it is in Cincinnati.
Right.
This just seems like the way the Patriots have played and Mac Jones has played. This seems like a similar thing to that Bears game where they could just randomly drop this game at home. I'm gonna stick with my guys. I'm gonna go with the Bucks over the Rams at home.
Okay. Fair. Very fair. Very, very fair.
You saved me the see, I have the Rams, so you saved me the trouble of picking against Tampa when I'm in Tampa. Well, that worked out so well when I picked against Baltimore in Baltimore. So I mean,
I want to know where you're gonna be next week.
Right.
Next week I'm gonna be home. 2 weeks, New Orleans.
For now. Oh wow.
Okay.
Look at that. Look at that. Big time over here. All right. See, these are two games I really don't want to pick. But I have to, sadly. Is there any Raiders injury off the top of my head that I just am unaware of at the moment?
I'm looking for you right now.
I'm just curious.
It doesn't appear to be that there's any kind of injury for them.
Okay.
Well, the only injury is where the hell's Devontae Adams been?
Fair enough. Very fair. By this slight, because again, Jacksonville young, I just don't think this is their season right now. The Raiders, they need to make some. I'm betting on two teams to try to turn their seasons around here with these last two. I guess give me the Raiders. I guess if there's one thing I can take solace in, this is probably the game Devontae Adams should bounce back because I cannot name you a single secondary player on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I can't. Like if there's a game he's going to finally show up in, it's this one. So give me the Raiders.
So that leaves me with the Indianapolis New England game then as my 1 point pick. And interestingly enough, guys, you know that we're about 8 years and 11 days removed from the Jonas Gray game, and that was against Indianapolis.
Right.
Well, 8 years and 11 days to the day, Zach Moss is going to do the Jonas Gray game.
Let's go.
In revenge. Indianapolis over New England.
I like it.
That's Zach Moss's one highlight. 204 yards and 4 touchdowns. Never hear from him again.
I mean, hey, I know it was JT specifically last year, but I think Colts running backs do fine against New England. He could have a good game. Yeah. And Sam Ehlinger didn't look that bad in his first game, honestly. They didn't lose because of him. They lost because their defense choked it at the end.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And they're not facing the all-worldly god Taylor Heineke. They're facing the mortal man Mac Jones.
As well. Speaking of all-worldly gods, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you guys have recognized at this point, hey, wait, guys, the deer, Sandoval, he has no games this week because the only other game was Thursday Night Football. Well, ladies and gentlemen, do we have a remedy for you? We realized this early enough in the week, thankfully, for us to have a little bit of a plan around. I don't think we'll do this because I think, Rick, you said this happens one more time, that there's...
It might happen twice because Thanksgiving is a weird one.
Okay.
So there's 3 games on Thursday.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as all of you, I'm sure, are very, very, very much aware, we have a workaround when it comes to Sandoval specifically. So we are bringing back on this episode everyone's favorite, the Wheel of Chaos.
The Wheel
of Chaos. We're bringing it back threefold, actually, guys. So this is how it's going to work. We're going to do 3 spins on the wheel to decide what game Sandoval is going to get. Here's how it's going to work. Spin 1 over here is going to decide whose selection of games Sandoval gets to pick him from. The second selection will decide which game he is going to get, who he's going to go against us on. So essentially, Sandoval is going to go head-to-head against one of us on one of our specific games. And the third and final spin will be his specific point multiplier that he is going to get for that game. That, of course, will also be dependent on what he's going to get, because I'm not giving that damn deer a 10-point multiplier on a 4-point game. I'm saying that off the front end. So let's go with the first spin, ladies and gentlemen. Who is Sandoval going to go up against?
This is kind of written like Clue. It's Sandoval against somebody in the study with the candlestick. Something like that. It's weird.
Isn't really.
All right. Get my revenge on that hockey mask wearing neophyte deer.
Okay, so we have the first selection. It'll be Sandoval against Rick, guys, in that one. Now the question is, what game is it going to be? I was kind of hoping actually it was going to be Justin for a second. I was low-key hoping, because it's only right. It's
only fair.
Yeah. Justin,
I assumed he was going to get he's going to get me, and then he would do the Jets with a 10-point multiplier.
That's hilarious. All right, now for the game here. You guys see it's on there multiple times. 1, 2, 3, and 4. What game is he going against for Rick's sake?
I'm pretty confident about my selections. I mean, I don't know. Be Chicago or Carolina. Go for 4 or 3.
And it is... Don't tell me.
And Sandoval's going Chicago.
Wow, it's kind of ironic, because essentially Sandoval gets an upset pick there.
Yeah. All right, 4 points.
So we will have the third and final wheel up momentarily, ladies and gentlemen. We just have to do some adjusting. Rick, are you scared now because of what that deer has done to you this season?
I brought the deer into this world, man. I'm not intimidated of anything.
And the funny, you brought him into this world and you refused to take him out of it.
Well, it does create a little bit of added chaos to the chaos, so it kind of works out that way.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, that means we have one final spin of the wheel. There we go. We're only doing one on each, because
2.5x.
Yes, 10 points. He could get 10 points.
Oh, math. Okay.
Yeah, it's the best one, and also 2.5x times 1 as well. So why not? All right, let's do this spin. What are your predictions right now, boys? What do you think he's going to get? I say he gets 2x.
2.5 plus 1.
I say he gets thrown in the trash by next week.
It's just a 1. It's just a 1. All right.
So, Rick, you're the master of it. Please summarize for the people what all our picks are.
All righty. Well, at the 4-point pick margin for Justin, he's taking Minnesota over my Commanders. Damn you. At 3 points, he's taking Buffalo over the Jets. Damn yourself. At 2 points, you're taking Atlanta over the Chargers. And at 1 point, you have Tampa Bay over the Rams. The people of Tampa Bay, thank you for your service. Jurg, at 4 points, you are going Kansas City over your vaunted rivals, the Tennessee Titans. At 3 points, you are taking the Glory Hound Geno Smith and Seattle over Arizona.
Let's go.
At 2 points, you are taking Green Bay against Detroit. Damn you. And at 1 point, you are going Las Vegas against Jacksonville, as Jacksonville comes off of a bye, followed by another bye, because they were in London and they were on the bye. Right. So they are very well rested going into this game. For myself, I am going Miami over Chicago at 4 points. Cincinnati winning at 3 over Carolina. 2 points, my upset is New Orleans over the Ravens. And at 1 point, I have Indianapolis knocking off the Patriots. Go, Zach Moss, go. Sandoval's 4-point pick, Chicago against Miami. 1 multiplier bonus, so it'll be 4 points for him this week if he wins. Which will put him at 35, so the two of you are still safely ahead of the deal.
Which sounds about right. As the season has shown, as it should. So that wraps up all the fun, all the football with a bit of chaos. And now let's finish off with pure chaos. Guys, you know this ends the show every single week, and I'm happy for it. Last week's cut a little bit short because of a hockey mask-wielding Fanta deer. Let's see what this one is. And considering he traveled today and what we know beforehand, we know a little bit of what's happening today. Rick, Please, rant for the
Oh.
people. What do we got on the Rostrum podium this week?
All right. Well, I'm going to start off with a rant that, in my mind, started one way, but ended up going a separate way. My number 3 spot goes to rental car companies, specifically Budget and Avis. Now, Budget and Avis were the only ones at the Tampa airport that had cars to rent. So National, Dollar, Enterprise, Alamo, no cars available. Good job by you guys, first of all. Budget and Avis both offer service called it's Budget Fast Break or Avis Preferred. All you got to do is sign up on your phone, and you can skip the long counter lines. You're not waiting 2.5 hours to rent your car. Go down to the garage, give them your receipt, and you have your car. Now, I did that in line while I was waiting 2.5 goddamn hours for my car, but it was an easy process, and I went down, got my car, actually rented a Corolla, got a Mazda CX-5, so well done by me. But here's my problem. Why aren't you marketing this better, Budget and Avis? Why aren't you telling more people, hey, you know that these lines suck, because they do, so download this service, sign up for this, and here you go. It's free, so why not sign up for it? Why not market it better so that way you guys aren't the bane of everyone's existence? Because let's be honest here, rental car companies are the bane of everyone's existence minus the IRS. It's basically the same thing. So please, market yourselves better. I'll even do it for you. I'll market it for you. I'm marketing right here on this podcast. Everyone download Budget Fast Break or sign up for it. You will get your rental car in 5 minutes instead of 3.5 goddamn hours. Okay. Number 2. This is my sports one. Now, we talked off the air about chess cheating and about fishing cheating and about cornhole cheating. It's the new one. But I want to cast your mind back a little bit to something different in football. And there's a tie-in for something that happened this week. Do y'all remember Bishop Sycamore, the high school from Ohio that lost the game 58-0 to IMG Academy, that swindled everybody into basically saying, we've got D1 recruits, and there was no evidence to be found of these D1 recruits? Well, Bishop Sycamore at least finished the goddamn game, unlike West Toronto Prep, who played IMG Academy this week and lost 96-0 at halftime. Now, they're terrible. We know this. What's the deal with prep schools that are basically founded on the premise of, I like football. Oh, I like football too. Let's field a team. Because if you go to West Toronto Prep's website, all the pictures they have are of football, of the coaches, of the players, of the warm-ups. There's nothing there about the school at all. So basically just a school for nothing, in a sense. Guys, whether you're Canadian, whether you're American, whether you're Welsh, whether you're Belgian, you all know that schools are important and everything matters. By the way, to my friends in Wales, happy Guy Fawkes Day. Remember the 5th of November. So good on you for that. I hope it was a very nice fireworks-themed night. Number 1. Oh, let's go to number 1. Let's talk about JetBlue and JFK Airport, gentlemen. Oh, this is the bad one. So, okay. I have the flight booked to Tampa. And like Norfolk was the plane that was identity confused, didn't know what airline I wanted to fly. The plane that I had today at JetBlue was going to gate 1. Then it was going to gate 5. Then it was going to gate 8. Then it went to gate 23. It was like a 12-year-old orphan in the orphanage that no one wanted. It was like Calvin Cambridge from Like Mike. Nobody wanted this damn plane. And the worst part of the whole thing was that it ended up in a really narrow part of JFK where the plane coming in from Puerto Rico had the entire goddamn island of Puerto Rico on the plane. So it took them 95 minutes to deboard the plane with 17 wheelchairs and a medevac stretcher. And the board still said, oh, your plane will depart at 10:24. Doors close at 10:09. We didn't board until 10:29, JetBlue. Get it right. And then for all the S&Gs that they had, JetBlue even said while they were there, there's a lot of traffic going down to Florida, so we got to wait on taxi and about 21 minutes. Really? You can't add that? You can't foresee that in the future that, there are a lot of people flying to Florida right now, so we can't have anybody in the backwash spinning around Goose and Maverick style from Top Gun, rest in peace. But still, the fact of the matter is, why did you make this so much more difficult than it needed to be? And the fact it was terrible. Waiting in that line and waiting while everyone was coming off the plane, waiting to get on the plane, it was literally like a subway station because everyone was pushing and all of that. And there were families that didn't know where they were going, standing around waiting for all 27 of their extended uncles and aunts coming from Nogales, Puerto Rico, or wherever the hell they were coming from to get over to JFK to go to the Chibo Express for an $18 cinnamon muffin. Really? Just go over, move out of your way, and let the people who were there for Tampa Go on, because again, if you tell me that the plane is coming in at like 9:50 or whatever, and we're going to start you boarding at 9:55, you're lying. It doesn't take you 5 minutes to deboard the plane, clean the plane, change the crews, and then have everyone board and get on. Because people are idiots on the plane that stand there trying to find the best spot for their luggage, put it in an overhead bin. Who cares if it's 9 rows away from you? Have you heard of walking? That's why everyone else is in a goddamn wheelchair, because they don't want to walk. It's stupid. This was the worst experience. The flight was actually pretty good, but the worst experience I've had to deal with in JFK. And I've been flying with JFK and there now for about 8 months, and it was terrible. Do better, JetBlue. Do better, JFK. Don't do anything West Toronto prep. Just go away. And again, market yourselves better, Budget Navis, and all the other guys, get cars. It makes perfect sense. No matter where you are in the world, no matter what city or state you live in, Duncan still sucks. And Adam Rank, you fight me because you know where I am. By the way, one other thing, Kyrie Irving, get waived and go play somewhere else. I don't want you anywhere in New York ever again because you are a traitor, a travesty, and a sorry excuse of a trash human being. Thank you very much.
Mic drop. That right there. I mean, to be fair, Rick, Adam Rank probably doesn't know where you are because you're in a different city every couple of weeks.
I said at the top of the show if he paid attention, but he doesn't pay attention, so that's fine.
Yeah, probably doesn't acknowledge our existence in any way, shape, or form. Irregardless. Ladies and gentlemen, another smashing rendition of the Rant Podium. Another amazing pick challenge. Which one of us will be severely disappointed? Will the deer dunk on Rick once again this week? Who knows? Great trade deadline breakdown. And of course, we had fun at the beginning. We do a lot of different things on the show. We go long sometimes, but hey, it's for the fun of it because it's just the boys having fun. Because at the end of the day, on the Sports Ages of Chaos podcast, we're here to have fun. We're here to talk football, and we are here to cause just a little bit of chaos. Thank you so much for joining us on another amazing episode. We're about halfway done with the season, guys. What's the second half of the NFL season going to behold? Who knows? What we do know is that through all the circumstances, whether one of us is out for the week, whether one of us is sick, whether one of us is just life is dunking on them, deer included, we are always here on a weekend basis. We'll see you guys next Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.